But I do agree. I do agree that everything is fair game when we talk about it, because there's like
because time is a spiral,
and you can't talk about the things that are interesting for me to talk about right now have almost nothing to do with the text that we actually read. Because it's all about like what the fuck that happened later, like because finishing Exodus and starting Nightside in the same day was like really cool. But that day I could only read like the first paragraph because I was just like, what the fuck? This is fucking insane. This is so fucking crazy.
I think this book is crazier than that.
Literally every sentence I would just have to like close my eyes and be like, what? So that was great. It was fun. It's a good book. So we should talk about it. I don't know where
are we live?
I agree, it's good. I like it. I'm nearly finished with the second of the 4, so that's where I'm at. Yeah, I'm stoked to know what you're talking about, and I guess we can cover spoilers and stuff.
I'm like nearly done with with Nightside, but as I've always stated, I don't care about spoilers. So
I have mixed feelings about
or Protestant.
What?
Is this book Catholic or Protestant?
What are you talking about?
Oh, man, I don't know.
The book
I
is
think
long
it's fun. It's making fun of Catholicism, right? Like
it feels
like a little
very Protestant to me in that way.
Nobody.
I think we could talk about that. Like, is Silk like a satire? Is Silk a comedic character? And then I think we can also talk about how is Silk different and similar to Severian?
Well, he's kind of dumb. That's
similarity.
I think
is he dumb? I think he's naive, not dumb. I think that he's actually pretty
dumb.
That's
yeah.
I mean that's fair. He's innocent in a way that Severian was not.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that he's oblivious, but in a less self-centered way in some ways, though he's still self-centered.
Well, he always tries to like figure out what everyone's feelings are going to be. He's always like, and then they'll probably feel this way and this way, which like it's very thoughtful, but it's also like, no, you don't know, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Of course, it's so hard not to do, but like that's just an example of self-centered being oblivious in a different way.
Right.
He really goes with his gut without thinking a whole lot of it through.
Yeah.
But when he does think it
like
through, he's just restating what his gut is telling him.
Yeah. Well, he's just like, I don't know. I guess I got to go and threaten this guy. I'll just break into his fortress and work it out when I get there.
Right.
And to that end, I wonder, okay, let's talk about who's writing this story.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Well, this book is really interesting. The narration is in free and direct speech, so it's like,
which I found so jarring the first time I read this.
I mean,
What does that mean? What does that mean?
So free and direct speech is when the thoughts of characters are still filtered through the narrative voice. So it happened, like Jane Austen like perfected it, but it's also in like Ulysses, which I think is probably more where this is coming from. Where it's like, you know, when somebody's thinking about something, it doesn't say like, and you know, then I thought this, Silk thought. It's like the narration actually kind of gives voice to his thoughts, but it's still not him thinking it. It's the narrator relaying the thought that he's having. Which is a very, I do think it's probably a Joyce thing for WOLFE here, but I've been
Mark, I'm getting big Joyce vibes, especially like Dubliners more so. from this book, and I'm curious if other people are too. But I just wanted to say that. But continue.
No, total. I mean, I'm not. I can't really claim to be super well versed in Joyce, but I guess I know what to look for, for that kind of thing. I think it's definitely there. I think that like the epiphany, like this very like, there's this very inward looking kind of like spiritualism that sort of like just happens, and that feels very like Joycean as well, where it's like, or like some type of Proustian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
real quiet.
I don't have
What?
anything to say yet. Y'all being
Jen-
too literary.
You're too far from the computer.
yeah, Jen, I can't hear you that well.
Ugh.
You don't gotta be afraid of James Joyce, Jen.
I'm not afraid of James Joyce. I want to read James Joyce. I just feel like I have to do it in a group. Remember we talked about we were going to do a side for Ulysses?
A side reading of Ulysses. Yeah, just just a little light reading.
Yeah, a little side
Or
read.
were we going to no, we were going to not Ulysses, we were going to do the other one.
Finnegan's Wake.
Oh, Finnegan's Wake. Yeah.
The craziest book ever writ.
Fucking torture.
Some people read Finnegan's Wake and never return.
I will say this.
My friend John, I told him about that after we had that conversation that we were going
Well,
to
I don't know where you're going with this, Mark, but I think Finnegan's Wake is written so that the last sentence of the book picks up with the first sentence, like they actually like go into each other. And it's interesting, like regarding like what Jordan said of like I don't know how this book finishes, but I guess you could say, Jordan, do you feel like it actually like links right back to the beginning? And if so, I mean that is a Joycean technique.
New Sun does it.
Yeah. I mean, New Sun did that too.
I might have to go back and look. That's not what I meant. It might do that, but more what I meant was like having like everything that I had just like learned about this world and going back to the beginning, because he never explains or introduces the things. He just like slowly reveals what all of these words mean in time.
Mm-hmm.
So like, while I understood like, oh, this is a story about a guy this thing happens to while he's playing a game. Going back and reading how he introduces it and like everything that gets referenced, and how I guess it is like New Sun when you go back and you're like, oh, he tells you everything that happened, and literally he just tells you everything that happened, like down to like, I don't know, he just tells you every single thing that happened, I guess.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't know that, you wouldn't be like, oh, now I know that these things happen. You would never do that because it all seems just like, because just like Gene uses so many things that just seem like turns of phrase or ways to describe something, and really he's like revealing so much when he does that, but it's so easy to gloss over and overlook. It's so interesting.
The only thing I was going to say is like this is so much more readable than Joyce, like and more readable than New Sun. I feel like the way that it works, like I was blowing through it and then I got distracted, so that's why I'm a little behind. But like,
I feel like it's deceptive how readable this book is.
Yeah,
like you're reading it along, you're like, this is like a normal book, and then after a while you turn around, you're like, holy shit, I don't even know what this is.
Yeah. And you just realize you have no idea what's happening. I guess that's like being Syl.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And I think that what we've been saying about the narrative voice in this also is indicative of the way that Silk's personality works differently than Severian's, which is much more eye-centric and objects-oriented, with Silk, who's much more abstract and kind of all over the place and everywhere.
Well, it seems like Severian is always hiding what, like Severian is observing and obscuring, and because the narration here, we're not like Silk is not in control of the information we're getting, so we see what's happening around him, and we see how he's responding to it, in a way that's a lot more like I feel like we have even. I mean, I'm not far enough into, I guess, be in the total comic book stage of it, but it seems like we get a lot more of like just visibility of like the stuff that's happening instead of having that filtered.
Yeah, sometimes he's
Mark,
just
you're
like
gonna be so excited.
What,
Ryan?
I think you're going to be really excited when you realize that is exactly the opposite of what is happening with Silk.
Yeah,
Okay.
even
Yeah,
I'm only
knows who's
book
writing
two.
this book.
Book 2 is a trip.
I know who's writing it.
I think I know who's writing it. Yeah.
Honestly, though, I remember so little of Sun except for the vampire. I mean, Short Sun except for the vampire parts that I don't really know exactly what it means. Who is writing it?
I would like to talk about who's writing this book and what that means for Silk's character. And I do think that it's. I'd have to go back and skim through the whole first chapter, but I think that the author identifies themselves in the first chapter someplace.
Go on.
Okay.
Can we just say who's writing the book, or
Yes.
Okay, right?
Sure.
You don't mind?
We cannot
Wait.
concern ourselves with spoilers.
Hold on. Is this something that is revealed later, or is this a theory? Okay.
This is something that's revealed later, and I think it does change the meaning of the book. However,
But it's also revealed in chapter 1. I really wish that I had made a note of where it was, but
I think
Okay.
that that's true. That what Connor said is true. I also think it's impossible. It might be impossible for us all to talk about it unless we all know.
I mean,
I
I do
think
know, and I'm still not sure what it means.
We can't concern ourselves with spoilers.
I
Yeah.
just am saying.
I can't wait until book 4 to talk about who is writing this, kind of.
No, I'm not concerned about spoilers.
It's Horn.
Yeah,
It's Horn. Okay.
Horn is the author. And so
Okay.
I feel like that, and this is the first time that I'm really reading this and thinking, this is what Horn thinks about everything.
Right.
Like when you're looking at Silk and judging Silk, you're judging it through the eyes of a 17-year-old who worships him.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're getting Silk's awareness, it is like when we're listening to Severian's story, this is what Severian experienced. This is the most
Who's also a 17-year-old boy.
Right, who is also a 17-year-old boy, but it's a 17-year-old boy's perception of things that happen to them.
Yeah.
This is a 17-year-old boy speculating.
And it
The whole
also affects the characterization of other characters.
totally.
And how they're like treated. Possibly.
But he's also like
But
he's all of this is things that were told to the author, or then things that the author surmised from things that were told to him. So this story is much more
and Neville too.
in the world of the story than the last one.
Is he writing it at the age of 17, or is he writing it later in life?
Later in life.
Okay.
So it's not. So I was wrong. So it's not like we're getting an unfiltered experience. We're getting a double filtered experience.
Yeah.
Right.
And it takes a while to realize exactly how oblivious. I feel like it takes more than a book to realize that Silk has no fucking clue what happens around him, or he's just like uninterested. His attention is never on like the bigger picture.
I feel like it never really sank home for me until book 3.
Yeah.
That's when I was like,
It took
oh
me a
wow,
while.
there's a whole story that's happened that I didn't know about.
Yeah, you really historical events have to really fall on his head before you realize there's all kinds of things going on in this society that Silk has not addressed at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like is very apropos for right now. You could, I feel like it'd be really easy to go on YouTube and hear about the world and what's happening through the point of view of someone who is missing like gigantic important threads.
Yeah.
Without which you couldn't understand their context. Ooh. Hey, has anyone read In the Name of the Rose?
No, I'm starting it.
Isn't
It's
I
good.
just started it too, and I feel like it seems like it has a lot to do with this book. And
What is
belongs to it. I mean,
In the Name of the Rose is Umberto Eco, and it's sort of like a Sherlock Holmesian mystery that takes place in like an old monastery, like I don't know, like sometime in like the 16th or 17th century or something like that.
14th century.
14th, okay. And there's like a murder that occurs in this monastery, and so this older monk investigates this. You know, like it's like a mystery story, but it's really beautifully written, and he's accompanied by like a younger monk, and in their course of their investigation of who killed the one monk, they uncover a lot of secrets about the politics of their monastery. There's a good movie too. You don't have to read the whole book. The movie's pretty good, starring Sean Connery and a young what's that actor's name? You know, who's that?
Violent J.
I forget the guy's name. Ethan Hawke, maybe someone like that. Yeah. Great. But why do you bring up In the Name of the Rose though?
Well, I guess the detective priest protagonist.
Yeah.
And that also I just started In the Name of the Rose because I've been reading that Barbara Tuchman book about the 14th century, and and I'm almost done, and I want to stay in the 14th century. So I thought that a cool mystery about monk, and then I guess I read that In the Name of the Rose has got a huge like meta textual thing going on, and I've only read the very beginning, but it starts with this introduction that's like, I was in this place and I was given this manuscript and I started taking notes, and there's like this whole story that is clearly a pack of lies about how like he got a manuscript that was like copied from the 19th century from a 17th century guy that had read the thing from the 15th century, and like this weird chain of events where he like the story that you're about to read is something that was filtered through him through strange circumstances, and then it turned out like he couldn't find any other evidence that this existed, and someone took there's all this very Wolfian, like Borgesian kind of like what's true, what isn't true, what has this author embellished, what is the author he's reading, what has he embellished, like all kinds of stuff like that. So I thought, Wolf must have liked this, and it's from like 81 or something. So
the Soldier series does that.
I believe though that Lung Sun is intentionally a pastiche of Chesterson's Father Brown mysteries.
Yeah. Which, has anyone read those? I've read a bunch of those.
Mm-mm.
I worked for a family of geniuses at a flower farm one summer in high school, and they all were mad for those books, but I've never read them.
There's a very Wolf kind of thing going on with those, because they always have like a very Sherlock Holmes mystery going on. But the Father Brown, like very often, has encounters with people which turn into like insightful philosophical like duels, where and also his sidekick is a criminal with a heart of gold who's a lot like Hawk. Yeah.
They're both jewel thieves.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Yeah, there's like a 1-to-1, it seems like, with almost like fan fiction or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen kind of like pulling in about that guy. But the Father Brown things are really neat, because you can just read them as just like a fun little Sherlock Holmes thing, but they often have Chesterton kind of like intruding with these little tiny these little conversations where Father Brown convinces someone that they have to like, that it's not as wise as they think to deny that miracles happen or something like that, He's doing a lot more artfully than that little summarization, but there's a kind of this weird Wolfian agenda of like big philosophical ideas that kind of just like poke in for a little while.
Mm-hmm. The existence of God in this book is crazy. And the role of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I understand it at my current reading of the book. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I know what Wolfe thinks about faith. I don't know what this book is saying.
I don't know what Wolfe thinks about faith. I mean, just like just to ground our conversation in the first book a little bit, like we get the situation where Silk receives this transmission from the outsider, and he immediately is convinced that he will drop any sort of immediate moral scruple and will just break into this mansion in order to possibly save his own mansion. That's pure faith right there. But it's a weird interpretation of faith. It's like, I mean, what if the outsider told him to go kill somebody? He
does a bunch of times when he's talking about going to the mansion. He's like, and if he doesn't help, maybe I might have to do something.
I mean, in the actual Bible, God tells his heroes to go actually kill people, and they do.
Yeah,
often their own children, and that's like the Kierkegaardian leap of faith. Like that is like the truest test of faith, is like this understanding of like, this is what I'm being told to do, and I'm going to go and do it, even though it also goes against the morality that is imposed on my actions by this same deity.
Is there a point where it's mentioned that they used to do? Isn't it mentioned at one point that they used to do human sacrifices, but they don't anymore? Like that, so it was a part of practice, and now they just sacrifice like intelligent animals or whatever.
Yeah, the talking animals when he's getting Aura, they say that.
Right. But they used to do human sacrifices.
Right.
Children.
The best sacrifice.
The best one.
But this is a Gravesian idea of the Gravesian definition of the hero, someone who commits the heinous sin so that the community doesn't have to deal with it. They take on the penance for the community so the community can thrive. Wait a minute, but where was I going with all that? I had another point to make.
I want you to say what you think you said, I know what Wolfe's idea about fate is.
Oh, I think that Wolfe feels that the power of fate is in its futility, or the power of faith is in its futility. That like the whole nature of faith is that you believe in something even though there's no evidence about it, and that's why it's powerful. That the most powerful parts of the universe don't have evidence of that, because they are supernal. I think that that's definitely what he thinks about faith. And that's why you have a guy who, when God tells him, break into this house, he can just be like, okay, even though that makes no sense and goes against everything else that I have studied about studying God. Like, God said it to me, so I got to go do it. I have faith in that, you know?
But it's also, God didn't say that. It's Silk's idea.
Right.
Yeah.
That was Silk's interpretation.
It's sort of like Silk has a mandate, and so anything is excusable as long as it serves that mandate.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, like the whole book is Silk trying to prize out. Like he gets messages from many perceived gods, and the whole time, I feel like maybe the actual conflict of the book is Silk trying to figure out what is a real message from a real god, and what is a message that has been tricking him. And like that is his whole quest, is to just filter signal from noise. And I mean, you're correct in saying that in the end, Silk only has his interpretation of his theophany. But it is his faith in his interpretation of the theophany, even when it is a misinterpretation, that is his power and his ability to move the story forward. A person who didn't have faith in even their misinterpretation would be frozen, as Silk so often almost is by his decision.
So can we talk about the gods then? I mean, obviously y'all probably have a better grip on it than I do, but like, what do you think these gods are?
Well, you've seen in the section we read, you've seen Poss referred to at least twice as the two-headed one.
Right.
So you know who he is.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I thought about that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much.
Yeah.
So like, you guys who are just like starting these, like, do you feel like have you like, do you know what's do you guys know what's going on with them, like, or do one of us need to like just basically explain?
I think it's somewhat. I know what it says in the second book, which is, if that holds up, the gods are like the original, I guess, like founder and family of the ship that they're on. That might be a spoiler.
That's what I was assuming. I was assuming that they were like either uploaded consciousnesses from the people who either created the ship or were the initial passengers, or they are AI constructs that were created specifically as a means of like instituting a religion that maintains some kind of control over the inhabitants.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to point out, this is something that a term that's used in the first chapter. The word for heaven is mainframe.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And they only appear in windows, which are like computer screens.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Tells you everything. So yeah, you know everything.
Cool.
You're hip to it, Jen.
Yeah, I just wanted to know.
I mean, pretty much. I'm still kind of unclear on some of the stuff that, like how they're manifested now. Like, and again, I mean, my head is like more in the second book, just because that's where I'm pretty much finishing that right now. But there is some like blurred lines, in my opinion, about how they're like, what exactly the gods are.
I think that there's not, like, as far as the mechanism of how they work, I don't think there's any more necessarily that is revealed.
Yeah.
I think it's just, like...
I mean, they seem to take, like, a corporeal form sometimes. They seem to be, like, just in screens and communication.
Like inside of people's brains, they think. It seems like, right?
Tim, how do you feel that they take corporeal form? I want to hear about your experience of them taking corporeal form.
So
I don't remember what happens in the second book. I don't know how to divide up the book. I don't know how to divide up what happens in each of the books.
Are you talking about possession?
In the second book. Oh yeah, actually she does possess Chenille. Now I think about it. But she's like, it seems like Chenille's body like takes on like, gains like superpowers and is like flying around like.
Right.
Which
man, there's so much to talk about. Who is Chenille? Who's
right.
parents?
But it seems like Scylla was sort of like had like a physical form though, like at that point, like Auk kind of sees something in the water with like 8 arms, like.
Oh, that's something else. Right? Isn't that the submarine?
I think it's a submarine, but they don't know about the submarine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But that. Oh wait, does that happen in the third book?
No, it happens in the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
I guess I
the
could.
first time I read so much of this book, I was so sick.
Oh, like
So like
you were ill.
reading this book kind of makes me feel like I'm in a fever dream in a really cool
No,
way.
this book is very dreamlike. It's incredibly dreamlike.
Yeah.
It took me so long to realize that like conversations would pick up in the middle without the beginning. And so like I would have to be like, oh, okay, wait, they're talking about something I don't know what, like it makes sense I don't know what this is, or like, you know what I mean? Or the way like, how like every, what?
What?
Connor?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm. You finish what you're saying, and then I'll go.
How conversations are really confusing to me, and I don't know if that's on purpose. I think it is, and I feel like every conversation, every like thing that everyone is saying, could mean like several different things depending on how you look at it, or like who they're talking to, or whatever. And it's just fucking confusing. That's all.
I think that I think that there's an element of this book that it's I think identity is one of the most important things in this book. Who is who and when are they that person? I think that this book is kind of about hive minds, you know? And that's part of why you pick up in the middle of conversations and stuff like that, is because the individual characters are often all participating in being one larger character. And I think that sometimes those characters even like it's pithy, like you're talking about, because those characters, like sometimes one unit of person is being several different characters at once. They're participating in several in different hive minds at the same time. And I think that is why we have this shift in narrative voice from New to Long Sun, because the identities are more gestalt and larger and weirder.
Cool. Yeah.
Do you mean shift in narrative style, like how it's written?
Well, like having it be in third person and being able to get inside other people's heads and all. Yeah.
I mean, this actually kind of reminds me of I think this would make a good TV show because of the way it's written. Like it, you know, like the way it has like different parallel storylines going on, which increases as it goes along, I guess. Like, you know, like Silk's doing this, and then, you know, what's his name? Musk is like working with his hawks, and then Maytera is our like mansion, and then Ock is looking around for him, and then, you know, like the way it goes back and forth. That's like a different storytelling style.
This book likes to do a thing where they show you like one little tease of a character doing a thing, and then 3 books later we'll get back to what that was about.
Yeah,
it reminded me of Lost a lot, but maybe just because I was watching Lost and reading it at the same time. But I think later on, I don't know if it's both of the next books or just one of them, but they just like switch between people so much, like 8 times a chapter or whatever. It's like really crazy. Like,
yeah, more of the gods get involved.
Yeah,
it's great.
which is interesting. That seems to happen more the more into the narrative you go. Whereas in the first book, I think it's primarily Silk driven, with like little asides. But the second book seems to more threading of storyline seems to occur.
Mm-hmm. Although, so this is the first time I've read this book with the Daruzi lexicon that goes with it, the companion.
Yeah.
And Jen, have you looked at that companion at all?
Yeah, I've started to. I feel like part of the reason that Penny's like yelling in the next room. It's making it hard for me to concentrate.
Jedi.
He has this phone voice that's like he just like yells really loud, except when he's on the phone with me. And then he mumbles and I can't understand what the fuck he says. But when he's on the phone with anyone else, he's like, "Hey, I'm coming over to do that job in your yard." Anyway, what I was gonna say, one of the reasons I'm not talking that much today is because first of all, I just like feel a little funny, but second of all, I just still feel like I'm not grounded in the books yet. Like I still just feel like I just don't feel like I'm like in there yet. I think I need to really like jam and read. I feel like there's like, it's been so long since I've read them that there's so much stuff that I like sort of remember.
Yeah.
But it seems just like so far away. Like I can't get it. But I have been, actually, to answer your question, trying to reference this more just to like get more in the mindset of the whole series sooner, like as quickly as I can, to just like get as much of that back into my brain as possible. But I'm just not quite there yet, so I feel just like a little bit disoriented, I think.
Okay. Well,
because I don't know, and maybe like you, so maybe like you or Ryan, I don't know how long it's been since you guys have read them, but I feel like what I'm going through right now is different from what other people are going through. Because because I have read them, but it's just been so long and they feel so foggy to me. Which is
I think that's just how this book feels.
That's just the book. That's just
I don't think that it gets better. I think you have to.
No, this book isn't grounded at all. Like having just read it, I'm just like, I don't fucking know what to say about them. I don't know what the important thing is.
I know.
The more I read this, the less I understand it.
I've been kind of like dreading this meeting in a way because I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck to say about this book. Like, I don't think.
Well, I think that's totally valid because we're all in different places with it, right? Like we're all like kind of approaching it differently. You know, we're all kind of like walking up to this book from like different vantage points right now. Whereas I feel like we were in a rhythm with New Sun, but now we're kind of restarting, you know, we're resetting, you know, and it's hard to get a conversation going.
I think we started New Sun by just like opening up the book and being like, all right, here's the beginning of the book.
We were much more nailed down to the text.
And then let our craziness spiral from the text.
I mean, I think we ultimately like should do and maybe will do that with this too. I mean, I think we have to, but also maybe we don't. It seems so different that maybe I don't know. I just don't know. I feel very disoriented.
I feel like we're going to get to the text, but I feel like I just wanted to ask some questions beforehand, and that's what this has been for me.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming we would kind of do, and just like talk about what everyone needed to get out in the first meeting, or maybe, you know, or first chunk of the first meeting or whatever, and then eventually like spiral back into the actual text.
After a couple more sessions, we'll all be kind of more in similar kind of ways because we'll have been reading and rereading and thinking about it more. And I think it's great to like bring up kind of like big questions now, you know, about like the whole narrative, and maybe trying to just establish some things about this world, maybe talk about WOLFE, and to me, I think it's interesting to think about how this compares to New Sun. Not that I think that has to be something we have to continue to talk about, but there's that like coming from New Sun, and then, you know, it's seeing the ways that WOLFE constructed this universe, with the same universe, but this story. It obviously contrasts with New Sun in so many ways. I think like bigger general conversation is good here, and maybe like moving forward we can like ground it more. I don't know.
So maybe we should talk about the general like structure of the world kind of stuff, like We all can agree that they're on a man-made ship world that is like a long cylinder shape, and there's like the sun is like a thing that goes through the middle, and there's like a shade that rotates around that that illuminates the different parts of the.
And so it's a cylinder, right? And so when they're looking up and seeing the skylands, they're just seeing the cities on the other side, right?
Yeah.
But it seems so odd to me that those cities seem so remote that they're like not even accessible. But you could just walk up the side, right? Like, is there?
I was looking at this a bit.
Yeah.
I was trying to kind of like, one of the things I was trying to think about was that and the sense of scale. And it says in the entry in here that that the radius, it is shaped like a cylinder of unknown length, having a radius of perhaps 3 square leagues, which would be 180 miles. So if it has a radius of 180 miles,
that's huge.
That's basically from that, meaning from the sun to the ground is 180 miles. Like, that is a large cylinder.
So we got to pi r square that, and then we can figure out how.
It's planet shape size. So I mean, a small planetoid, whatever.
That's very useful to talk about.
It also says somewhere in here, it also that there, and not in this entry, but that there are like hundreds of cities.
Yeah.
And they're all, and this is also mentioned, I'm sure it's at some point late in one of the later books, it's mentioned that like all of the cities are like pretty far separated from each other.
Yeah, I was going to say they're also purposefully separated by topography and culture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're at least they're like 50 miles. Like each city is like 50 miles or something away from the next one, and there's like geographical things between them. And yeah, like Connor said, they like each have a distinct culture, and it's like I forget. This is like one of these things where it's like when I read it before, I knew all the answers to these things, but I feel like there was some mention at some point in one of the later books that like the purpose of that was to not have like warring factions, or like was to kind of like keep everything peaceful. Like you just have these little groups, kind of like distinct city culture, like size cultures.
Yeah, that's talked about in the second book.
Everybody like from killing each other until you can get to like. So until you can get to what?
Right.
The point of the ship being what? To get people to a new home world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big question, right?
Is it? I don't know. I don't.
Is it revealed?
Yeah.
People have read it. Okay. So I don't know where they're going, but
of course, it's been hundreds and hundreds of years.
It's been 1,000 years.
1,000 years since the ship set out, and the people are in this kind of that new sun state of technology is ancient and in decline. Yeah. Their understanding of it is destroyed for the most part. Like they really, I mean, I love the windows. How, like you really, I feel like the windows is how you first get that sense of where the people are in their history. That what is to us like a screen is a strange mystical magic thing that's maintained by priests for them.
One of my favorite sci-fi concepts is that the like extreme ancient peak of technology, which happens also in New Sun, which also happens in different like Queen books and stuff. But also, so I wanted to take what Ryan just said, 2 different places. First, one like little micro thing that I think is really interesting is I remember when I read this last time, I got really hung up on the voided cross, the like symbol, and I was like reading about that, and it also so the cross that the priests wear is also a tool that they use to like maintain the windows and stuff. It's like a screwdriver on one end. It's like a multi-tool that you use to maintain like windows or whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
Like the voided cross, you can put it on a bolt and twist it and undo the bolt.
Well, and you can make tests. You can test connections with the points of it.
Yeah.
A lot of
So
stuff.
it's like so the cross. I think
What
that's
shape
really,
is it?
really interesting.
What shape is the voided cross?
Are you saying it's a swastika?
Well,
There's a big discussion about this.
It's a Gamadian.
I remember a lot of those email lists on that whatever that is that
EarthNet
or whatever emails. I remember reading like sifting through emails about that. And yeah, it's like hollow in the middle, right?
Yeah, the voided cross is a thing already, and this is what it would refer to in our world, at least.
The voided cross is several different things.
Right.
But then it has like I seem to remember having different tips on the ends or something.
You can like you don't screw them off, but you flip the arms and they come off. So they don't come off, but they flip out to use them as tools.
You know, like a Leatherman.
Yeah, it's a Leatherman. They're basically IT pieces.
And he also, I mean, he talks a lot about the symbol of addition, which I think is also just a cross.
He
It
makes
is, but they also have the sign of subtraction.
Which I guess would just be a dash, right?
Okay.
Well, and he describes like when he's attending to the girl who like spoke to a demon, and he draws. I guess he calls it the symbol of addition. He draws it on the window, like on the outside of the window, and he describes it as a tilted X, which I mean also would just be a cross, right?
Yeah. Or a plus sign.
It's a Celtic cross.
Yeah, the sign of addition.
I don't know if this is interesting information for anybody, but it would be a Celtic cross rather than the Roman cross, and which was a symbol that, I mean, it was the symbol of the bad guys in the Albigensian Crusade. You know, it was the symbol of one of the biggest rival churches to the early Roman Church. It is not what we would think of as a Christian symbol right now. The Wiccans use it.
Ooh.
So specifically, the difference being that the Celtic cross is equilateral.
Right. All the arms of the Celtic cross are equal,
right,
rather than in the Roman cross,
where it's longer.
Right.
Okay.
And to some people, that's important. I don't know if it's important to Gene.
I mean, now
They call it Gamadian, right? Which is like 4 points, a shape made with 4 points. And that's, I think, the only definition. However, Google image says it's a swastika.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people who say it's swastika.
I mean, the Roman cross, the off-center cross, would not be really like an X on its side. I mean, or the sign of addition is like a pretty good. I think the sign of addition is like a pretty good key point.
Yeah, I think the sign of addition is maybe the clearest indication of what it's supposed to be. But I mean, who knows?
And then I feel like we need to talk about the chems too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, gotta talk about the chem.
Man. Over the course of the story, they break my heart.
Do they? I just want to say one more thing about the religion, which is that I think it's implied or that outright said that Scylla, because the religion is really only, everyone has gods, but the religion is really only practiced in Viron.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Viron.
Viron. It's only.
I would say Viron. Yeah.
That religion is only practiced in Viron. And it's made up by Scylla, apparently. So, like, it just seems like it's a joke. It just seems like the entire thing is a huge joke to me. About, like, probably Catholicism, I suppose, if it existed at that time. I mean, it probably existed in some form.
Okay,
anyway.
So for example, in the next city, they would have a different religion. That's what you're saying, like different gods.
They have gods. They like talk to the gods and stuff. But it's just not. There aren't like Mantians. There aren't like augurs. They're just like, yeah, that's our guy. Cool, right? That's the impression
Well,
I'm.
the flavor of the religion is different.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's that.
Right.
But it's
Yeah,
the
like
same
this
pantheon.
one is very Roman Catholic, like in the Argentina.
Well, right, because if there were religions in different cities on the world, then they would all have to worship Paz or like the Typhon, in some way. But would the manifestation of that be different?
Exactly. Yeah, they all worship the same gods, but through different flavors.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what our world is.
Right.
I mean, often, yeah. And
Yeah.
more so in the ancient world. The more I study about how religion behaved in the ancient world, that henotheistic is what they really were, where they were like, yes, every god is real, and this is our god, and he'll kick your god's ass.
Right.
So again, that brings us back to the question about what WOLFE is saying, if anything, about religion and spirituality in this world, considering that they're worshiping Typhon, who we know is just a tyrant. Like
Well, it's fake. It's totally fake. But like also, but also there is a real God.
mm,
Too.
Yeah.
I guess that brings us. I mean, do we talk about the outsider?
I mean, if we go to the text, it's the first thing we'll have to talk about.
Right.
It's the main conflict of the book.
Yeah.
The outsider drives everything, sets everything in motion, and is the like North Star by which Silk makes all his decisions.
Right.
I don't think this book is Protestant, and I don't think that Gene Wolfe is Protestant at all. I think I would like to take that and at some point, I gotta say it, Protestantism is about applying rationality and like reconciling like the magic of religion with the belief that there's no way magic is real, which is I don't think is anywhere in this book.
I
think it's
that's
also.
entirely right.
I mean, I think that's one part of Protestantism, but I also think there's this big part of it that's about removing the primacy of the clergy as like human connection to God, having a personal relationship with God is something that really comes to bear in Protestantism. I think that that's a really key point. And so, like in some ways, Silk is doing that, but he is a priest, so it's
So was Martin Luther.
Right. Yeah.
I feel that Silk says a lot of the things that Martin Luther says.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Martin Luther was like a very intriguey political asshole, dude. He was, and who was like driven by very temporal, I feel like, goals, whereas Silk is on cloud fucking 9. Like,
Sure.
Silk is the exact opposite, I feel like, of the personality of, or the like historical movement of Martin Luther. Martin Luther was like
We can take routes to get to the same place.
And this is also, it apparently is Horn's version of Silk's experience, which could be a very different kind of story than Silk's actual motivation.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like in the Protestant-Catholic duality, you have Protestant faith being saved by good works, and in Catholicism, good works don't mean shit. Like good works are, to think that your good works provide you with like grace or salvation is just pure vanity for Catholics, and silk is clearly an emblem of faith, and like the cart and the horse, like Silk's faith is what makes him heroic, and the things that he does, the good things that he does, are like very rarely what he intends to do. Which I think is not a Protestant idea. I think it comes back to the rationality of, like, in Protestantism there's this this responsibility of the person to be right, where I think, like, I don't think that Silk is a satire of religious people as much as he's a satire of people, and that much like Laura Dern's character in Enlightenment, it's like you take this total idiot who kind of often misunderstands the thing that they believe themselves to be dedicated to, and they end up, despite all of their flaws and all of their like human failings, they end up doing the right thing because that bigger thing they believe in is more powerful than their flaws.
I mean, I agree. Let me clarify: is the story Protestant, even though Silk is Catholic? And is Silk proving that by being the best Catholic he can, he takes apart the whole structure of the Catholic Church?
Well, I don't think that makes it Protestant necessarily, because Catholicism is driven by mystics throughout thousands of years. I mean, there's like Reform doesn't have to be.
Protestantism has its mystics too.
Yeah, Protestantism can get pretty woo-woo. But I think it tends to be that way.
Books of Moses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it tends to be that way on a more personal level. I think it resonates more with, like, if Catholicism is ceremonial magic, then Protestantism is witchcraft, or like there's a folksiness to Protestantism because it's not all tied together by one doctrine. It's this massively like sort of diasporic version of Christianity. It's got
Neil Stevenson describes the difference as the established versus the gathered church. Catholicism says, like, this church is real because it's been around, and Protestantism says, no, we listen to this guy because he's able to get people to listen to him. He gathers his church rather than it is established, and that's the major difference. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening.
Charismatic teaching is a really major part of Protestantism in a way that it certainly isn't in Catholicism.
Right. We don't have to be interesting. We're the only thing.
Yeah.
So in that way, that there is.
I mean, it seems like Wolfe is. I don't know if he's necessarily trying to take a position on it, but it seems like he's interrogating that idea.
I feel like he's tonguing at that canker sore.
Yeah.
I mean, just to inject like a slightly different take, like I see more parallels here than Christianity or Protestantism. I mean, it seems more obvious to me that it's like more of like a Greek Roman mythology analogy being drawn with this world and ours, and I think Wolfe kind of like describing the situation that is absurd and untrue. I mean, that their religion is just based on a pack of lies, and that the real religion is like outside of that. It's bigger.
I think it's crucial that it's Silk, a religious person, and in fact a blindly religious person, who bridges the gap between like the historical lie and the outsider. Like, it's not a scientist, it's not even a smart, self-aware character who realizes and like makes that leap. It's a guy who follows his faith like extremely ignorantly.
Yeah. I would float the hypothesis that it's Silk's ability to believe in a clear and blatant pack of lies that allows him to have the faith to recognize the perhaps truth when he encounters it.
Mm-hmm.
Although it seems like maybe some people doubt the outsider.
Right.
Which I think is cool, to doubt the outsider.
Yeah.
Because I believe in the outsider, and I think that the nature of believing in the outsider is to doubt it.
Do you want to talk about the text?
I just had a moment where I remembered that thing about Silk being like from a embryo or whatever. Like, I totally just remembered that. Yeah.
So the main
Silk
reason
Silk is someone's creation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The main reason I want to talk about the text is because I have in the first paragraph, there's a very confusing thing that I have not wrapped my head around. And I want somebody to explain it to me.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Which is Maytera Marble being also Maytera Rose.
Yeah. I'm
like, I read that like 5 times when I first opened this book. I was like, I don't know. I guess it's a wolf thing, and I just kept going, and I still don't understand it.
Can I talk it through? Is Maytera Marble is a chem, right?
Right.
And Maytera Rose is not, but Maytera Rose possibly has chem parts in her, just because
she has a lot of prosthetics. Yeah, a lot of prosthetics.
Yeah.
So
she's incredibly old. 90 is incredibly old for this.
Right.
So was she given parts by Maytera Marble from Maytera Marble's body? And is that why she's both her?
You're like very close.
Okay. Okay, that's all I got.
Jordan, you want to go?
Yeah.
So Maytera Marble takes Maytera Rose's parts later, and then they like become the same person.
Oh.
It's part of the whole identity thing. I feel like Connor's talking about.
Going both. The interchange of parts goes both ways at different points.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and then there also has been other the chems have been here for 1,000 years. They get repaired many times. So like, Marble is like 3 different chems and Rose. Like. Identity just breaks down the more you read this book.
And I love the character of Maytera Marble, because she's that old, but she just doesn't remember. She's so simple, she's just grounded in her present day life, which is so like so many of the older people who I know. When I ask them, what was life like back in the, in the 40s, and they're like, I don't know, I don't know. I'm just.
Wolf loves to play the game of giving you a familiar thing and then putting a sci-fi conceit behind it. And then I feel like his insinuation is always okay, well, if you can link together these things, if you can link together just an old sentient machine and the behavior of an old person, then maybe some of the things about religion are the exact same, and other mysteries of the universe. Maybe you could see them in the exact same way. Maybe possession by a god also could be interpreted in a scientific way that you would accept, but you don't accept the mystical thing. But ultimately, it might, the result would be the same. That's I feel like that is the big prodding thing that Wolf is always doing is the stuff you don't believe makes complete sense if you just add this hard sci-fi firm,
and he really
sci-fi.
pushes it to the limit, in Earth I feel like he takes that New Sun I feel like does that conservatively compared to Earth of the New Sun, which takes that idea and stretches it as far as you could possibly conceive of it, but it still seems there. And then this book also pushes that pretty far, we're talking about a world-sized spaceship, traveling infinitely far, right? That's the grounded conceivable story of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and part of it is like, well, ultimately the experience is the same. Is that being on our world, which isn't a ship and isn't going somewhere, feels exactly the same as it does for the people on the world.
But they're as above, so below, right? Like, New Sun is a journey outwards into the cosmic degree, and then Long Sun, because it's in an insular environment, is a journey inwards.
Right.
To
And
the
if the sun itself is at the center of the world, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the end of the
I love
story is about getting
So
out of the insular world.
I love it too, how just like how the underground tunnels, like you're going closer and closer to the outside.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and Mark, that was such a big bomb you dropped there, that the sun is literally at the center of their world, right? And isn't in like classical thinking, right? Like the sun was, or no, the earth was the center of the universe, right? Okay, so I don't know. Still, it's interesting that the world revolves around the sun.
Still,
Yeah.
to this day.
I mean, that's what we believe, right? So
Yeah, I guess that's how it works.
maybe that's
Well, we
maybe that's
believe
something-
that then the sun revolves around the center of the galaxy, which revolves around the center of our galactic cluster, which is congealing on a dark matter. Like,
Yeah.
we think
We
crazy.
also believe the sun is on the outside.
Well, also the sun in this world, it's not exactly that the world is rotating around the sun. The sun is a part of the world
Yeah.
that moves with it, and there's a shade that moves. So it's not exactly.
And it's not like, I mean, I guess in our
It's
case,
like the axis.
yeah, and
Yeah,
and
that's
like
just
in our
windy.
case, like the sun begets the world, and in this case, the world is part and parcel of the sun.
You know who else thought this kind of thing, guys?
Hitler?
Not the Nazis.
I
Oh,
knew
Who?
that's where you were going.
Nazis? You remember the Nazis?
Who? I can't. What are you saying?
Nazi.
Oh, yeah.
Nazi.
We're on the internet. I'm talking about the Nazis.
Great. So, remembering the rose marble thing just made me think about how. So, like, I think it's in the second book when they're talking about possession, or maybe the first time. I think it's mentioned that when a god possesses you, they leave a part of themselves behind, but they take a part of you with them.
Mhm.
So and it stays there forever, and presumably that means that like so many people are like so many different parts of each other because everyone's like constantly leaving something behind. Just like how like the parts, you can have the consciousness of like so many different people. Also,
But there hasn't been
this
possession
happened
for years.
what?
There hasn't been possession for years, so that
Environment,
we're going to build up of that over the course of this.
Environ there hasn't been.
Right.
But
but
everyone in other cities are constantly talking to gods, right?
Oh, it's my impression that there's something wrong in the mainframe. So for like 2 generations, there hasn't been any gods
anyway.
the Windows at all. And it's just starting up again now because of what's happening.
Gods
thought
of the
that was-
Windows and possession are different things, though. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sort-
so it's
I
like
think
people...
No,
have
you're
been-
only possessed through a window. You can only be possessed through a window.
Yeah, that's
here at the window. You can't be possessed through it.
that's what happens to Chenille, right? She gets the lights go into her eyes, right? And she gets a little bit of a program inside of her,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
For lack of a better description.
The outsider wouldn't need that.
But we don't
Is it
ever see that nobody's possessed by the outsider. He only gives theophanies.
No
But-
one's possessed by the outsider.
I mean, can we ground this literally? Like, are the windows like social programming devices or something? Like,
It's hypnosis. They reprogram your mind through like parallax view, light and color.
Yeah, so I mean, is that literally like when they built these things, they were like, okay, every town is going to have this computer screen, and the people will come to it, and this will sort of program them to function the way they need to in order to keep this ship going or something? Like, is that the literal like purpose of these screens?
And then beyond that, they can the screens can can overwrite your personality with the god's personality, and then those experiences can be re-downloaded into the god so they can have a corporeal form in this world.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys seen that Fassbinder movie, World on a Wire?
Oh no!
Oh, it's good. It's kind of like, it relates to this. It's kind of like a proto Matrix. It's like the Matrix, but like 1973.
Oh wow!
I'm in the middle of watching it right now. I saw it at the Charles like many years ago, but I barely remembered it, so we've been watching it. It's like
I had no idea that's what this is about.
It was like it was a 2-part thing on German TV, so it's like 2.5 hours long, or it's over 3 hours long, the whole thing.
Awesome.
But now I don't want to say what's relevant, what it reminds me of, because I want you guys to watch it. I don't want to spoil it. So I'll just say you guys should watch that, and maybe later we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Because I really don't want to ruin like the exact plot point that I was just reminded of. I just don't want to. I don't want to ruin that.
It's a fictional narrative, Jen?
Yeah.
I have to get more coffee.
But it's like
it's
like the Matrix. There's like a simulation model thing.
Mm.
Oh, I had a Matrix question earlier when we were talking about faith. And I don't know that I can remember it now. There's something about like, if your belief in a lie ends up with the positive effect on your world that you wanted in the first place, isn't that the same thing as believing in a true thing? Just like if you're living in a simulation that is real enough to be reality, then fuck it, that's reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that one sort of mean bad character says in the Matrix, right? He's like looking out the window and he's like, all these people live like full lives.
Oh, yeah, he's like, I'm going to eat this steak and it's going to be real good.
Yeah.
Cypher.
Yeah. I just want to forget so I can eat this steak and like actually like it.
Yeah. Is everybody excited about Matrix 4 / John Wick 4?
Slash Bill and Ted 3.
Right.
Yeah.
I was never too far into the Matrix, honestly.
We're only ever gonna have to watch one more movie. I think that's the. We're just gonna get the one more movie, and it will be all movies.
That's right.
Perfect.
And it's gonna be My Own Perfect Idaho, and Keanu Reeves is gonna play the Silver Surfer in it.
Nice. Was he supposed to play the Silver Surfer at some point?
Yeah, but except that point's like right now.
Oh, they're making a Silver Surfer movie starring Keanu Reeves?
Nobody knows what the truth is, but Keanu Reeves. I mean, they bring Keanu Reeves every time they make a Marvel movie. They bring Keanu Reeves in to talk about who he will play, and they just haven't found the person yet. And
this is the only Keanu Reeves movie I want to watch right here.
Speed?
Bam. Best Keanu Reeves ever. Boom. That's all you need right there.
It's not Point Break, but it is very good.
Speed 2 was originally Die Hard 4.
Really?
Yeah, and then they were like, let's make it this instead. And they just switched
Put it on a boat.
The script.
Never
No,
saw
it was on a boat, and then they were like, let's have Speed be on a boat rather than Die Hard on a boat.
That's fine. Speed 2 sucks.
Yeah, but it wouldn't have sucked if it was on Lake Limna. Thank you,
we
everyone.
talked about that.
Lake Ligma?
Yeah.
is Theseus's ship the name of the riddle or whatever you want to call it? Like, if a ship is a ship's mast breaks and you put a new mast on it, and then its jib breaks and you put a new jib on it, and over 100 years, each part of the ship is replaced at some point, and at the end you have a ship that has been continuously in operation, but it has none of the original parts. Is it the same ship? Is that Theseus's ship? Is that what that whole thing is called?
That's the ship of Theseus. Yeah.
So that's like obvious. I feel like that's looming with these chem people.
Yeah, that is certainly what's going on with Marvel. Actually, I want to do some research on this. I believe that there's the two main chems. There's a male chem and a female chem, and both of them make reference to 3 different personalities living inside of them. So in effect, we have a triple god and a triple goddess for all the Wiccans keeping score. Like,
and I mean, that
is Molly Denham and one more person, and then also Marble. And the other person, Magnesia. She's Molly Denham, Magnesia, and Marble. And then Sandstone is 3 different people too.
And that seems very much in keeping with New Sun. I like, particularly with Jonas. Maybe even more directly with Jonas, I guess, since he's a sailor.
Yeah, it's super like, well, because I'm thinking about Severian Tark having all of the consciousness in his head, having so many like Thekla, whoever, all the guys.
Yeah.
The old Autumn.
Yeah.
There's a way in which everyone in this story is Jonah, right? Everybody's in the belly of the whale in this story.
Right.
And
they're all sailor.
They're all unlucky. They're all Jonahs in the sailor can't. Right?
And they don't know that they're in a belly or sailing.
Right. But they're all doomed. So it starts on a ball court.
Yeah.
A what? Oh, a ball court.
Yeah.
It's a foam court. That's
Which-
what makes sense.
So
This opens
I like
so good.
this idea that Patera Silk is just some bro. That he's like a real pretty boy bro priest.
Totally.
And that's why it starts off with him doing something awesome on a ball court.
It's like he freezes, has this insane vision, and then immediately scores on some little kids in this fucking game they're playing. Like wins the game
score.
by he
throws it to the hoop and then catches it and gets the rebound.
He does a slam dunk.
And then as they're leaving the court, Horn justifies that he did it. He's like, you were the best player for the little kids. If you hadn't have played as hard as you could, even though you like punched me, like you would have been letting down the weakest people. So you had to totally stuff on me, master.
He's the only adult playing with a bunch of children, and he just rocks.
He's like 21 or something. Like, yeah, he's an adult, but he's like, he knows more about hanging out with those guys than he does about being an adult.
Yeah.
He's actually pretty close to the age of Horn, right? Silk is about 23 and Horn is about 17.
Oh, okay.
Not that far off.
No.
But he is also exceptionally tall for a grown person. And so he's got like multiple unfair advantages here. And he doesn't, and it doesn't even, it doesn't seem to occur to Silk at any point to hold back.
Well, God's talking to him at that moment, so he's compelled to be.
I get the impression he wouldn't have held back no matter what. That he's playing as hard as he can against these little kids.
17-year-old. I mean, like he's playing he's on the little kids team, and he's again 23-year-old playing against like 15 to 17-year-olds.
What a great way to cap off your epiphany. Like God transmits this like deep knowledge to you, and then you just like slam dunk a ball. You're like, yes.
So the next thing you do is you go out into the streets, find the richest person you can see, walk up to him and say,
"Give
me your money." And then he does it.
And it works, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I think I think Tim and I were talking about it when we were playing our RPG like a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, man, I just started reading this. Like, Silk is a maniac. Like he's just totally insane. And it's so fun to like watch him do. Like, Severian is a maniac, but he's constantly trying to like show us that he's not a maniac, and Silk is just embracing it.
I feel like Silk has almost no self-awareness, which kind of adds to the dude bro vibe to me. You know? He just, and I mean, I don't know how much of Silk's origin tale we want to talk about at this point in the book, but like, I think that he's been pretty spoon-fed up to this point. I think that he was a darling in priest school and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much we want to talk about Silk's parentage, but...
Well, in the section, in the beginning of this book, he talks about his mom, being incredibly doting on him. And we get clues in the first couple chapters of this about how he was like the mama's boy, very sheltered.
And she had high expectations for him, too. She expected him to be in one of the best positions in the church.
Eventually to become prolocutor.
Yeah.
Should we talk about it?
I can go either way. I don't feel a burning need to talk about this yet. And if people want to...
Yeah, I think we're not quite there yet.
I don't think it's necessary. I don't think they would eliminate it.
Yeah.
Like, because if we start talking about that, I'm going to start asking questions about, like, siblings and stuff.
It's a full can of worms, man.
Yeah,
and, like,
all right. We'll see.
It doesn't, there's nothing in the narrative to suggest that, like, it matters at this point.
Yeah, I'm just, like, having that thing where it's, like, these things are kind of, like, triggering my memory of other later things.
Yeah.
Well, to go back to the meta conversation for a second, and I think I was saying this to you, Jordan, at some point. I think that this book is a lot more holistic than New Stuff.
I think so too, absolutely. I think it's harder because, do you mean in the sense where like something that happens in the end is exactly the same as something that happens in the beginning and they're like just like totally tied together in a way where you can't do that talking about 4 books ahead? Yeah, so much more.
And each thing has one meaning when you're thinking about this part of the book, but when you're thinking about that part of the book, it means this other thing. And both of those parts of the book also mean these other things in lights.
I really want to be really conscious of everything Orib does and says in this reading.
Yeah.
Because like everything he says might mean like several different things, I think.
He's the smartest character, right?
I mean, so I said that there's no one who the outsider possesses, but there's a fucking feeling that the outsider has possessed Orib. I
have something to say about that. He throws the ball into the whatever it is, and they say that they liken it to a black bird, and that's happening like as he's just been possessed. And I don't think that that's at all a coincidence.
Where does it say this about the black bird?
Yeah, I'm going.
I have the page number. I took notes.
Yeah, it's on
the black
page
ball
4.
flew like a black bird straight through the ring at the opposite end of the ball court. Yeah.
Oh, also,
it's on. I just have like the hardback. It's on page 11 for me.
I think it's on page 8 for me. Also, the
is
boy that he
just Nightside?
I just have Nightside.
I have the half omnibus.
I'll find it. Yeah, it's on the bottom of page 8, the second to last paragraph.
8.
I'm the only one who has this book. My page numbers are different.
Which one?
But it's on my page 4. Mine is the litany of the. It's the first 2 books together.
Yeah, I have this.
That's
Oh,
what I got this.
the soft cover of that, but it's on page 8.
Okay.
That's crazy.
Wait. Hang on. We might be able to solve this. Wait, what does yours look like, Ryan? Is it the
I
same?
don't have the
just
dust
hard
jacket.
copy?
Oh, yours is
But so, hang on. Here's a question though. We gotta figure out, like, maybe it's because like ours is page 8. Page 8 is really like the second page because of all of the crap.
Yeah,
But
yeah, mine is the
what
second
I-
page too.
What I want to know is if the pages are the same. Because if the pages are the same, then it would pretty much just like
A simple
you
formula.
just have to subtract 4 every time.
It's
Right.
not the
So-
same for me, at least. Like, I have the standalone Nightside hardback.
Definitely not going to be the same for you.
So this is on the 3rd page of text for me. The black black ball thing.
Hey, somebody who's not Mark. What's the first line on page 34?
34. Why would we not just use page 8? Hour.
No, so it's
I
not just.
soon to come or so past appeared to intimate when this present world would vanish, would be left behind.
Yeah, so that's not the beginning of my page 30.
34.
34?
Right, but we were going
You
to
said-
see if a subtract 4 thing would hold, and it's not gonna.
Oh.
I think it's
Wait.
it should be 3, right?
Look at your other pages around there. Do any of the
What
pages
point
around
is
there
your
begin with
font
hour?
size?
What? Say it again.
Ryan, do any of the pages around 30 for you start with the word hour? No. Okay. But yeah, it's completely off.
We have to measure the kerning.
I think if we just did it in chapters,
Yeah.
we're in. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll be
We
It's
can
tough
look
when
at
you don't understand. Wait, so, but 3 of us have this one?
Yeah.
4 of us? Tim has it too. Okay, so 4 of us.
Yeah.
Well, we'll try to
We'll do our
figure
best.
it out.
I would like to try to pay attention, like real close attention to everybody's name as we read this.
Oh yeah, this reading I've been looking up people's names, or actually around the end of the 3rd book, I started actually looking up people's names and being like, what the fuck?
I think there's a lot of secret relationships that are revealed through names.
Definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I already.
And like keys
So
to the roles that they play in the story, like this kid Feather, whose only job is to fall.
Mm-hmm.
You.
There's a thing about
Ooh,
Horn, and how Horn has a
The horn?
and also Horn. So this is an interesting thing to think about for Horn being the narrator. Horn has a sibling named Ivory, and the gates of Horn and Ivory are the gates of Dream. The gates of Horn are the gates where are the gates that dreams that come true pass through, and Ivory are the dreams that are deceitful.
Whoa. That rules.
So that appears to lend an element of veracity to this, although Horn, we later find out, is an extremely three-dimensional and later on polydimensional being. But yeah, that's a name thing. But yeah, I think that the names carry a lot more workload in this book than they do in the last book.
Is anybody saying anything in the chat?
What's the chat?
Caroline said fear and trembling at some point.
That's that when I was talking about Kierkegaard, that's Fear and Trembling. Specifically is
In Las Vegas.
and the Finding of Isaac.
Fear and trembling. That's it.
Fear and Trembling in Las Vegas. I feel like that's more. Well, I don't know. It's probably plenty of loathing too.
So we're on the first chapter. We got the weird. We learn about how chems are weird. We meet some of the kids. What else happens here? Oh man, we gotta. I feel like we gotta do like a 4-chapter cap on these meetings or something, because the chapters.
I only read 4 chapters.
I think that we should try that to start, because the chapters are long and like a cover. It's weird because they cover, at least so far, they cover such a small segment of time, but such a large segment of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 13 chapters in this first book, so.
Yeah. And I wonder if we'll even, I mean, today we probably won't even get all through the 4. But, I mean, the first chapter, we meet Blood, and then also Blood comes back to the Mantian. Like, there's like 2 Blood episodes in the first chapter, or 2 Blood incidents.
Yeah, there are a lot of
sections
per chapter.
Can we talk about Blood's family for a second?
Yeah.
Because I feel like this also will illustrate one of the importance of names. Because Blood's mother is Rose,
And
so their connection, and you can tell through the connection of their names that Roses are blood red.
Maytera Rose is Blood's mother.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the last line of the first
Blood
chapter,
is sinister, so you get blood.
No, I missed that.
and we're told that Blood is a really rare name, and then he's insistent to Maytera Marble that he tell Maytera Rose that he owns the thing and to tell her my name. So I feel like even on a kind of cold read, Wolf is trying to get that through to you real early.
Yeah, it's definitely there, but extremely missable.
And it's very funny how much conflict Silk perceives between himself and Rose. Like every time he mentions her, it's like with like some acknowledgement or reference to the fact that she hates his guts.
So there is a theory that from the beginning, Rose is possessed by Echidna. There's a small part of Echidna in Rose from like 90 years ago, and that's why she's so disdainful of any kind of fraternization. I mean, also that she had this illegitimate child with the last priest also makes her disdainful of any kind of intimate contact. But yeah, she's such a prude because she is part Echidna from the beginning. Is a theory.
And Echidna is Echidna's Typhon's mate, yeah?
Right. Mother of the gods, mother of all monsters in actual mythology. Echidna in mythology is Typhon's mate.
Is Juno one of the gods too, though?
In this?
Yeah. Isn't there one
I don't
named
see anything reference to Juno. I don't remember that.
For some reason, I felt like on this read, I had a weird, confusing moment where Echidna was clearly Hera-ish, but then there was also a god in the. Maybe I was wrong. Why did I think that?
I don't know.
Well, can we name all the gods? There's only two boy sons.
But it's Tartarus and Polyx.
Yeah.
And
Paz and Echidna are the parents. Then you've got Molpe.
Yep.
Thelxipia.
Yep. Thelxipia. Sphinx.
Wait, what was that one you just said?
Sphinx.
Oh yeah.
Sphinx.
Scylla.
Scalding Scylla.
Yeah.
And is that all of them?
Those are the main gods.
Yeah.
That's 8.
Yeah.
There's 9. Sophia.
Thea, yeah.
Oh yeah. I feel like Thea never comes into play much, or I just don't remember Thea that much.
I don't
Isn't
think most of them don't really come into play.
Thea's Thekla's sister in New Sun, right?
It's Fia, not Thea, right?
Yeah.
PA.
Yeah.
Right.
But these are assumed names that they've
Fierce
taken off.
Fia.
They're not their real names. They're
Yeah.
like.
Right. Like Pos is Typhon.
I like the idea of Thea being Thea. That's cool. Why not? Why
I don't know if it makes sense.
Oh, it wouldn't make
Wrong
sense.
time.
It wouldn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, the wrong era by like
1,000 million,
many
10,000 years.
centuries. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
It does annoy me actually that in this he doesn't, like in the pause section in this, it doesn't say anything about Typhon, and in the gods section it like doesn't mention how they, it like doesn't mention that.
It's a much lazier book because I think this is a much larger undertaking.
Like, they might not want to explain something that's explicitly explained in the book.
I mean, but that's the whole point of
No,
that book.
this is, everything is in here is explained in the book.
Yeah, that's weird.
I just find it annoying because it would just be nice to have it all just like written there. Like, it would just be nice. I mean, I guess we're just gonna have to do that. We're gonna have to like write them in ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that's so common in WOLFE criticism. Like when you start going online and reading the conversations to like explain WOLFE, like it's always so circular and theoretical and unclear. It's like something about people who like talking about WOLFE, like to obscure their own interpretations of it and make them difficult in turn.
There's always a lot of holes. Yeah.
Like I haven't found any Cliff Notes version, you know, anything that's like this happened, this. Like
And it would
You
still
can't.
be sort of idea.
it doesn't exist.
I mean,
Yeah.
then you'd be Aramis or whatever. I mean, like,
Even he can't do it.
but that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
That's what he thinks he's doing.
It's interesting with sci-fi too, is where you hit like a wall with which like people are able to find ideas credible. You know, I feel like there's a lot of people that read WOLFE that don't think that. I mean, who would say like the Kabbalah is like a weird old superstition that was trendy to Madonnas a couple years ago, and aren't going to engage with that aspect of New Sun at all, even though like certain terms and names are just straight pulled out of the Kabbalah. But you know, like on EarthNet and on a lot of the online stuff, you find a lot of people for whom that's just like a door that's not going to be opened.
Meanwhile, Catholicism. Meanwhile, like you just have to talk about nothing but Catholicism.
Or do
It makes me wonder what I
I
close
find that
out.
really irritating. What's that?
It makes me wonder what I'm subconsciously closing out.
Yeah.
I feel like we've cast a pretty wide net. I don't.
I do.
I mean, I certainly we bring our own biases to the table, but it seems like we're as likely to engage with the Catholicism as we are with the Kabbalah.
This book is also way more political than the last one. So I think we're going to engage in politics in a.
Great, our three viewers will love that.
Yeah, that'll be new. Us talking about politics on this.
Never done that.
Well, where the text is explicitly about politics.
Yeah, that'll probably get us into some political talk
That brings
later.
up a good thing of who else is going to vote for Kanye besides me.
Oh God.
I can't vote for Kanye. I don't like Kanye.
I'm not sure that I like him, but I'm definitely voting for him.
No,
I would have voted for him in 2008.
I haven't trusted Kanye from the beginning. He's too explosive. The man's atomic.
At least he's transparent about how he only cares about himself and his worldview. So
he's a very
You know what you
Severian-y
get.
silk.
He's what?
He's like a very Severian-y silk, I feel like.
Totally.
Like he's
ignorant and also reprehensible.
Yeah, and like so absorbed with himself that he's like, it's psychotic, and yet there may be something innocent about it too, that like goes so far out one way that there's always a feeling, this possibility he might pop out on the good side again because he's gone so far wrong.
Have you heard the Dave Chappelle anecdote about meeting Kanye before he was famous?
No, what is it? I'd love to hear it. Can
Kanye,
you do Dave Chappelle's voice, please?
I
Don't
might
do
do
that.
Dave Chappelle's voice at some point in the story, but so yeah, before Kanye got famous, he was traveling around with some people who were all going to be on the Chappelle show, and so he was there. And at some point, they were listening to his recording, and it was a bunch of famous people and the not yet famous Kanye, and they were listening to his recording, and he said, "Stop that! Rewind that shit!" And was so proud of it and made them all listen to it over again. And then he got a phone call, and he said, "Hello, I'm watching some stuff that Dave Chappelle hasn't shown anybody before. Because I'm dope and I do cool shit." And that was it. That was the whole conversation. And he wasn't even famous yet. I just think that is amazing. I think that he's such an audacious man that just has an explosion of ego constantly. I don't understand how he can exist.
Yeah, it is surprising.
I feel like he's got the Severian aspect of one of the, in many ways, one of the worst examples of a person created by this culture, and so maybe he is the one that can save everybody, despite himself.
He's the torturer. He's tortured us with his record.
He is totally a torturer. He is absolutely immersed in this weird, materialistic, base culture that he also knows he doesn't really fit into. I don't know. I don't actually know that much about Kanye, but I am.
Wait, but I don't see how any of this description makes him different from Trump.
He's very religious.
He's exactly the same as Trump.
I think he's like Trump, but he's earnest in all of it. I feel like everything Trump says is this cynical thing, and I think that Kanye actually believes everything.
Yeah. Trump is always playing a character, and I think Trump knows the difference between Trump and his character, and I don't think, it doesn't seem that Kanye does know the difference between what he purports to be and what he is.
This is a fiddly little point, but I don't think that Trump knows the difference between himself and his character. I just think that he knows that he's playing a character.
Right.
I think
Kanye is chemically
that thing where it's that thing where you tell the lie so much that it becomes the truth. I don't think that he's conscious about it. I think he would explode I think his brain would explode if he tried to hold that in his head.
I think the thing with Trump is that he will say anything. If he knows that it's going to get people excited in whatever way possible, he will say literally anything. And it doesn't matter what it is because he doesn't actually believe in anything.
He just says the most expedient thing or whatever.
Yeah, what he believes in is power, and the way that you get power is just by telling people what they want to hear and then taking advantage of them. But Kanye West is incredibly earnest about himself and the things that he believes. They're all batshit crazy, but he does actually believe them.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure that Trump isn't earnest about the bullshit that he I'm not sure that he isn't at this point doesn't just believe everything that comes out of his own mouth.
I think he's too pragmatic. He's always his priority is clearly the utility of anything. I think he's a nihilist in that he doesn't actually think there's anything of value beyond getting what you want. That there's not a baseline principle, I think, beyond I want what I want that's driving Trump. And so he's able.
But there's an earnestness to that.
I think that Trump is damaged in a way where he has no capacity to believe in anything. And because of that, he can be earnest about things that he doesn't believe in, because earnestness does become a utility that since he has no hope of belief in anything, he has absolute control over it.
Well, I think the one thing that he does actually like believe is that he is like a great man or whatever. Like that I think he does think that.
I think maybe the one thing that Donald Trump knows in his life is that he is not a great man, and his whole life is trying to prove that wrong.
Yeah.
Prove Daddy that I'm not a baby.
Or like prove to all the New York socialites that didn't invite him to their parties that he.
It's like the only way for something to be true in a world where there's of pure utility is just like the only way for Trump to be a great man is to be on TV, to be a president, to have buildings, to have money. Without those things, he's nothing. And that's like, so if aliens come down and decide to take over the world, like he could change everything about what he says and how he acts and how he believes if now the power can only come through like kissing up to aliens or whatever. Whereas I could see Kanye, like aliens come and take over, and I could see Kanye deciding that he's going to fight a futile battle against the aliens because there's a greatness in like a beautiful, hopeless struggle. Of which he is, of course,
Kanye is an artist.
Yeah.
There's no denying that.
I mean, at least he's made something, I guess.
Kanye's not all there, though. That's what you guys are missing out on. Like,
right.
Well, they're both not all there.
But it's different. It's in different ways. Like, Kanye is like, there's a chemical imbalance going on there. Like, he's actually like slipping into true madness.
He's certainly mentally ill. Like, there's
Trump is not.
No, I mean Trump but his faculties are still there. I'm not saying he's working, but does that make sense? Like.
Kanye gets possessed.
Unhinged.
Kanye gets possessed by like inspiration, by like he's possessed, and I feel like in the way that WOLFE believes in possession, whereas like Trump is possessed in just the basic psychological sense of like Trump doesn't, he can't like, I don't know, he can't think of he can't separate things and step back and think about them. Apart from the utility to himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they both have like problems with mental faculties. I wouldn't say that they're the same problems, but
I mean, I think that they're remarkably.
They overlap, though.
I think they're remarkably similar in a lot of ways, but I do think that the central difference between them is earnestness. That Kanye like fully believe, like Kanye's religious in a non-cynical, like very serious way that also doesn't make any sense. Like he's totally insane about it, but he absolutely believes it. Whereas Trump,
and he believes
like the Bible's a crop, like it doesn't mean anything to him.
Well, but doesn't Kanye basically believe that he's like another coming of Christ?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like his religion is similarly self-centered. I mean,
absolutely. I'm not defending his religious fervor, but I do think he actually believes it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
And I think there's also like Kanye feels a sense of responsibility that like he's been given this mission and given this talent and he's been made into this like superhuman. He has to do something with it, where like for the world. It's kind of sense of destiny where you don't get that sense from Trump at all. Like Trump's gonna have a good time while he's here, and then he'll turn into a bunch of ashes, and hopefully his name will still be up on a lot of signs and stuff. But fuck all those people that are looking at those signs.
Yeah, Trump certainly doesn't seem to have any feeling of purpose. It's only just id. It's just raging id. Whereas Kanye is all ego.
So all we need is one more person who's all super ego, and we got ourselves a fine president.
And it's Joe Biden.
There it is.
I keep wanting to link this back to Severian and Silk, and so I feel like the Voided Cross to me kind of represents Silk's I mean, it's not exactly selflessness, but there's a kind of a selflessness in Silk in that when he's talking to himself and when he's making decisions and when he's struggling, like, he always brings in the gods. He always tries to figure out, okay, who is this relate to and what does that correspond with and how are things around me maybe a message from them. And he's constantly like putting all the authority outside. And he himself, I feel like that's the void. Like, the cross is around him and outside of him, whereas Severian is the opposite, where Severian's always bringing it back to himself. Even though there's a bunch of other people in him, it's still Severian, the ego, that is constantly like driving and being referred to and making sense of things. And and vaguely, I feel like that somehow links to Kanye and Trump. Silk and Severian are perfect creative creations that are like able to be pure because they're not, they're unencumbered by having to live a real life.
Is Silk less of a sexual creep than Severian?
That is a very good question.
That's something I'm thinking about as we read along.
He seems less
I'm
rapey.
curious. I guess less. Yeah, I mean, Severian actually acts on this stuff, but
he does.
Silk's
He's
got-
like
Silk's
he
got some
shies.
issues.
You know, he's not in like when this lady's approaching him, being like, "Let's do it." He's like, "Nah, I'm not going to do that." Whereas I think
Yeah.
Silk would not.
There is also a theory that Hyacinth is nearly constantly possessed by Kypris.
Uh-huh.
I think that makes sense.
I feel like it fixes a lot of my questions and problems with Hyacinth's character, who I think is one of the most enigmatic questions in the whole book. I don't understand Hyacinth.
I think it's completely possible that she's just someone who got inserted in and is just became part of it because Silk saw a naked girl for the first time. But I also think it's totally possible that it's like at least 4 other things. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, their relationship makes no sense to me outside of it just like. Because I was like, okay, when I was reading it, I was like, there's some kind of like bigger thing going on here, right? Like, certainly, it's weird to me that they're in love after that, like, weird meeting. That seems strange to me. However, like, Silk has probably never seen a naked person, right? And she's, like, really hot. Maybe some, like, maybe, like, Kypris is involved. But then it's like, but why is she, like, so into him? That's what would make me.
Oh, so because of the war in heaven.
Well, because of the war in heaven?
Yeah. There's this faction of the gods that are rebelling.
Oh, right.
And Silk is a cat's paw in that.
Uh-huh.
And Kypris works for Pus and is manipulating Silk on behalf of Pus, is how the theory goes.
She's also a spy.
Right.
Right.
Well,
Right?
she's working for Crane, who is a spy.
Yeah. Are we sure that she's not also an actual spy?
Okay. I get the impression that Hyacinth is being kept drugged out of her mind.
Well, she definitely is.
And so I don't think that she's an actor. I think she's a sleeper agent kind of thing. I think she's just passively observing things and then kept drugged to the point that when somebody says a keyword, she'll just blurb out everything she's seeing.
Hey, Sanic is asking how many spoilers are allowed because they've got.
Well, that's the question, right?
They've got something to say about Hyacinth. I said say it.
I don't think. Okay, I think like earlier when we were talking about, do we talk about where silk comes from or whatever? If it's like not germane to the conversation and not necessarily like helpful to talk about it, then there's no reason to say it just to get it out. But like if it's germane to the conversation, then I think we should be able to talk about. There's no cap on it. It's not. There's no reason to not talk about something unless it just seems like more useful to talk about it later or something. That's my answer to that.
Yeah.
Does anyone?
But I say the answer is 5. You're allowed 5 spoilers per episode, Shazbot.
Feel it, Shazbot.
Go
Alright,
for
so
it.
now we just have to wait for the delay to catch up. So see this. And then
We'll get to it.
yeah, then we'll see it. And then I'll read it.
Thank
Want
you,
to talk about
Ryan.
flyers?
What else is in the first chapter? Well, I guess I mean
There's a flyer in the first chapter.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the flyer?
Yeah, it's interesting that flyer is used in different ways between New Sun and this book. Like
There's
flyer.
a lot. The word
being-
Kaudi is mentioned in Claw a bunch. The person who's in charge of Saltus is an elf.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting, the regurgitation of words in here.
Uh-huh.
Which word did you just say, Connor?
Alcalde is the mayor of Saltus.
Okay.
The Spanishness of this book is really ratchet.
yeah. It's funny because in New Sun it makes sense because we're in our future Argentina, and I guess if that's where we encountered Typhon, it makes sense that their Spanish has come to the ship.
Yeah.
Too. But it is interesting that we're like not even on Earth, and these are people, like thousands of years removed from the leaving of Earth, and we still have ayuntamiento.
Mm-hmm.
Who's got it?
Yeah, who's got it? Ayuntamiento is interesting because I always thought, my high school Spanish made me think that the etymology of that word was help lie. Like ayudar is to help and mentir is to lie. Like I lie is miento, I think. But I don't know if that's what WOLFE
I don't
is.
think that lie is actually in it, but help is. I think it's counselors, right? I think that the literal translation is counsel.
Oh, you're talking about a different word.
It was,
Ayuntamiento.
I feel like WOLFE would have to be somewhat aware that maybe I'm going to type this into Google Translate, but I thought miento means I lie.
The lake, liminal, right? Because it's a mirror or a window. I like that lake.
Yeah, miento means I lie. I don't
What
know
if
that's
it's like?
or it's like I
What
don't
if
know if
it's
that's like the
Sorry.
you.
What if that's not the fragment? What if it divides somewhere else in the world? Like what if
Exactly.
I feel like it's one of those things where it's probably not the secret key that unlocks the meaning of that word, but I imagine that somewhere in there WOLFE is like, oh, that's interesting, and I'm going to keep that in the mix. Because he loves multiple meanings.
Yeah, we need the etymology.
I don't have my companion.
It doesn't say it in there.
A word. All right.
I mean, it says the definition, but it doesn't say
The etymology.
anything about the etymology.
Okay, so Sanic has dropped a bomb.
Oh, wow.
Well, rereading stuff, I just saw that Silk and Hyacinth are the same age. If Silk is a clone of Typhon, then Hyacinth is probably a clone of whoever Kypris is based on.
Or also a clone of Typhon. as might be Chenille, whose name means the same thing as Silk.
Oh yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They could be other, like, you know, they're all genetically engineered anyway, right? They could just be like slightly.
What was that?
Since everyone's genetically engineered and like, not everyone, clones and like grown from little seeds and shit. Everyone could be like, they can all be twins, like they could be triplets or whatever. You know what I mean? Like they're not. I'm just saying.
Well, Wolf does love those twins.
He does.
Yes, Shazbot says, I think Silk is predisposed to being attracted to her either through genes or some tampering that was done to the embryo. And this is a part about this book that gets me, that I really get hung up on, is like, eventually by the end, this idea of like genetic engineering of all the people on the world becomes a big deal. But I feel like that has to have a primarily symbolic function. Which is what? And that's where I feel like we get into what are Wolfe's ideas about fate. Because, like, if like science and religion have this kind of overlapping relationship where religious ideas can be, like, represented through science and vice versa or whatever, then, like, isn't the idea of genetically engineering... Isn't that strongly fatalistic about life?
I think genetic engineering is a red herring in this story.
Okay, good. That's what I want.
Wait, what did I say?
It's a red herring.
I think that it's a distraction. Well, I think in the end it turns out, none of that mattered.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think the whole thing is about how, I mean, the whole book, not the whole book, it's about how the world is breaking apart and like how the plan is coming into being and like how they talk about like, oh, this is why everything's set up this way and this is why there's soldiers, this is why there's this and that. But like it just manages to happen and and they have like this plan about how like new chems would be made and stuff, but it all just like is falling apart. And so it's like
are they in a drought?
It makes sense to me that it would link into Typhon from the earlier books, because it's like that's all about like the hubris of man and technology and all that. Like that's what Typhon is, like his whole thing, right? Yeah. So like it makes sense that carried over to just be like another symbol of that. You know, of like the futility and the kind of like hubris of science and like that kind of like really like human based kind of.
I have a hot take about that. I have a hot take about that, and it's gonna bear with me. This is gonna sound fucking crazy at first. So Pos is not Typhon, in a way.
Because it's
Typhon was downloaded onto a machine and then spent 1,000 years as an inhuman entity.
Yes,
and that's what Pos is. And one thing that I'm trying to a question that I developed the last time that I read this was, I kind of think that Pos is a better person than Typhon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not hard to do.
Not hard to do, but I do that. I think that Pos might even. I might be on Pos's side in this.
Yeah, he's trying to get them out of there.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also an interesting theory that I read that I talked to Jordan about, that like one of the problems with reading this book is that Silk isn't actually supposed to be the main character. It's just that Horn likes Silk, but really the main character is Auk.
Huh.
Because Auk becomes the Moses figure and Silk stays put. Silk is of the world,
Isn't Moses not allowed to go into the Promised Land?
And Auk doesn't either.
Oh, right.
He doesn't.
No.
I don't
He dies on the steps of the church, I believe.
Those whole like last couple pages, I was just like, what? I don't know. I need to see it.
Yeah, I think he dies on the steps of the Grand Mantian.
I'm so confused. Yeah, that whole. I think I like read the last couple pages in like a fury, not a fury, but like in passion and flame.
Passion and flame. Is that
what happened? And I was just like, why? I forgot about that. Yeah, I'm really confused. That's one of the things I don't remember so much is who leaves and who stays.
Yeah.
I was confused about that. I was like, I don't know. I'm not worried about it right now. Worry about it later.
But wait, what were we saying? Oh, I found out where Miento comes from.
Miento.
In the etymology of Ayuna Miento is from ment, which denotes activity or purpose. So it's active, purposeful.
Like the Latin ment suffix.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I threw my phone away, and I don't know where it is.
Cool.
So if you need me, on Facebook.
Maybe it's in the trash can if you threw it away.
Maybe. Oh, I found it. It went across the whole room. I'll be right back.
So then if the beginning comes still from Ayuda or whatever. I mean, yeah, I guess it's true. It all still goes back to Latin, even if it's Spanish, going back to Latin.
I mean, I do think that Ryan has a point that Wolf would be aware that there could be an intimation of lying there, and I think that holds for how the Ayuda Miento acts.
Sanic says, it becomes pretty clear that Silk is nothing like Typhon, so whatever his plan was fails. And also, like, Typhon's idea of Pos was completely cynical, but the Pos wasn't clued into that part, so he sincerely believes that he is a benevolent god.
Wait a minute. Zenek is saying that the plan of Pos failed because it didn't.
No, Typhon, whatever Typhon's plan was.
Okay, I don't agree with that. I mean, it fails in that Typhon is back on Earth dead, but I think that this project, it did exactly what it was supposed to do.
That to me
can we ground that a little bit? Like, what is Typhon's? Is Typhon just trying to get these people away from Earth, or?
Yeah, he's just trying to colonize a place.
Okay.
He's trying to colonize a bitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this links into what Jen was saying about how, like, this world is crumbling. And, like, Tim, you were asking about the drought. Like, the world is failing, like, because it's so old. And it's been traveling through space. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's starting to break down. Particularly exciting because the drought's not happening just because they're old. It's because they're firing the retro rockets to slow down. And water is the propellant. So they're voiding water to slow down as they approach their destination, and that's why they're in a drought now.
Oh my god!
I just am so excited about that. I didn't realize that until a couple of days ago.
Wow.
Well, okay, so this I feel like this is appropriate. Like,
yeah, totally.
On a certain level, the world appears to be breaking apart, and it appears that even to the point of view of the computer AIs, that things are going wrong, and like the effect on people's life is the same as like a world breaking apart. But outside of all this, it's not void outside. It's not like there's people like human beings trying to control things and have power and them failing is not the end of the story, and it's not like the limits of the system. That like the system continues, and there are things beyond people's efforts, beyond like people's understanding, and what appears and affects people as failure is not a failure. It's like you're saying with these rockets. There's other things going on that are not like mistakes.
The world is not meant to last forever. It's meant to be a temporary well-being.
Right. it's ran its course. And but so to support your position, the only reason that Mainframe thinks that things are wrong is because of the missing piece of pos that they spend the fourth book looking for. Like, because parts of Mainframe are like there's corruption, parts of it are rebelling against other parts in the past. A vital part of, you know, the MacGuffin part of the code was hidden. And that's why the computer doesn't know that this is what's supposed to be happening, even as the computer knows that it has to do this.
And there's definitely, in the personification of the gods rebelling against Pos, I feel like there's also like this universal law that personalities in power eventually at a certain point become obsessed with and like wholly consumed by preserving the power to the exclusion of all other concerns.
And just the concept of like, I mean, it kind of, it makes me think of New Sun a little bit too, because it's like, okay, so if you didn't have a drought and everything was kind of like running smoothly, you could imagine a scenario in which there would be a lot, and even with the drought, a large faction of people who are like, I don't want to go to a planet. This is where I live. I want to stay here on the ship. Like, we're going to rebel against the system to keep, like, we like things, make the world great again or whatever. Like, we need to like maintain the system that we're in, you know, and we don't want to go into this like new. So it makes sense also that you would like need not only that it would be the technical function where you're jettisoning water to slow down or whatever, but it would also be the psychological function that your environment is breaking down that would make you be able to leave everything that you and all of your ancestors know and knew to go to this new, totally unknown place. Like you would have to feel like it was your only option, basically.
Wait,
the psychological mechanism of that.
Yeah.
Wait till we read Short Sun. But yeah, contractions of the womb.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
There's like a bit of like trying to make sense out of the cycle of night and day and spring and winter and like birth and death. Like, why is that a fundamental part of everything in the universe? Like, why is that when it's clearly like so confusing and sad to an individual human being? Like, what does it mean that is so intrinsic to everything?
Ask that question again, please.
So the idea that like people wouldn't leave without the drought and without like some sort of breakdown, that they would remain like arrested in the whirl and things wouldn't change. I feel like that asks the bigger question of like, why does the sun go down? Why do all the plants die and come back? Why do people end? Like, what is the meaning of the cycle of growth and decay? Is there some bigger thing to it other than just like the world? Is there a greater?
Well, from where I'm standing right now, I feel like that's what the I Ching tries to answer. I feel like maybe I'm just
not this story. Or
huh?
You mean like that's what the I Ching and not this story tries to answer?
I mean, no. I mean, I think that this story says a lot of the same things that the I Ching is saying. That like time moves forward because of entropy, and like that naturally falls into certain patterns, and like we as people participate in those patterns because a casualty of abstract thought is things get bound up into symbols, which naturally aggregates practical realizations of things into bigotries, and kind of offloads critical thinking. So like, yeah, you're gonna stay put and stay the same if you don't have an outside cosmological thing forcing you to expand your world to be beyond just this O'Neill cylinder, you know.
And coronavirus is like kind of relevant to all this too.
Exactly. We are doing the whole time we've been talking about this, I've been thinking about how Silk is exactly Donald Trump from the right-wing perspective, where he's a good guy, and that coronavirus is the end of the world's journey.
Wow.
But yeah, Silk is a very libertarian saint kind of thing, you know, like the whole world exists in only small local communities. Here is a local hero who, even though, you know, who, like, the existing structure is completely failing us, and even though he doesn't want to, he's going to say, fuck you, this is what we're going to do now. That's exactly what libertarians think should happen.
I guess I'm kind of confused in the real life situation that, like, we don't seem to have leaders, and this would seem to be the plague would seem to be the exact fucking time for this to like become a thing, of people who step up and say, I want to see my city get through this and thrive, and I'm going to focus on leading people for solutions that work here, and it doesn't fucking matter if they don't work for people in Wyoming or people in Texas. And that's not, like, saving those people is got to be done by those people. And I suppose that this is like a libertarian idea, like you're saying, but it also just seems like
it's rights.
At a certain point, it seems absolutely fucking necessary that, like, part of the big problem that we're experiencing right now is that everything has got to be a solution for every person, and that's just impossible with like the numbers of people and the amount of distance and the differences in culture.
But the problem with the like practical actual like results of the way libertarianism plays out politically and socially in our actual world is that it's still like the focus is always on individual liberty and property rights before everything else. And it's not like, I'm going to focus on what's happening in my small town. And by that, I mean, I'm going to try to take care of the needs of the most disadvantaged people in my small town. Like, it's never used holistically, even in a small micro sense. It's always like focused very narrowly on particularly property rights.
Yeah.
And
well, doesn't
like maybe in a theoretical sense there are some ways that like the theory of libertarianism could make sense, but like in practice in our world it is like purely exploitative.
In practice in this book there's huge problems with it. I mean, Silk, who is, you know, I just want to look out for Byron and do best for my city, and becomes Aldi, like that whole drive, his heroic journey is about staying in a dying world instead of going to the promised land like everybody's supposed to.
Yeah,
you know, like he is libertarian saint, and in that he sits on a pile of shit rather than going into the new house.
I agree with what you're saying, Jen, about how it practically plays out, but I guess like the thing that mystifies me is that like it sort of ends there, that like we being, I feel like people that are whatever, like leftward inclined, like I feel like just tend to discount the idea of like smaller things, and in the end
I don't know if that's true.
I mean, anarcho-syndicalism is just that.
Yeah.
There's so much like I feel that there is way more community-based programming, community-oriented, community-based programming that is coming from and implemented by people from a left perspective than anyone from a right perspective.
Yeah, I think that's the great failing of American liberalism, is the idea that we can actually make this giant country work for everybody.
Right, liberalism not being left.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just like neoliberalism.
I'm just trying to draw distinctions in case people who are watching, like, I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
So
this idea of neoliberalism seeking to preserve, capitalist superstructure that is the United States, and that obviously not working. It's clinging to this thing that is abusive.
Can I say one thing about libertarians?
Yeah.
Okay. The problem in this conversation, and I don't know, feel free to take this apart. I don't know what the truth is. But, so, you're right that libertarians, as we see them in the popular media and as we encounter them in our own personal lives, are total hypocrites in the way that we're describing. However, the libertarians that would be successful, if there are libertarians that are successful, and I do think that we might have a couple examples of this, but they're terrifying to us, so we ignore them. Like the people who go into Oregon and have an enclave of 16 people, each of whom have 20 guns apiece, that's where libertarianism works, and that's where they're completely selfless and take care of each other.
Anarchism.
And if it's really successful, you're never going to know about it, because the whole point is that they don't want you to fucking know.
Right. Anarchism is a libertarian philosophy, but it's left libertarianism, whereas right libertarianism is beholden to capitalist understandings of property.
Right. Exactly. And libertarian philosophy can't work until you accept that all ownership is theft.
Exactly. So that is when it becomes anarchism, and then sort of the workable solution for anarchism is anarcho-syndicalism, which requires small communities working together towards common goals, with the understanding that we don't need power structures to impose law upon them.
Yes, the problem with the actual implementation of that philosophy is that not everyone is on. Most people don't have the means to do that. We live in a world where almost everyone is already hyper exploited and has no exit strategy or ability from the system that they're in.
Yeah, and manufactured scarcity won't allow it.
Except it's kind of a perceived thing.
It's kind of like how Buddhism has really good concepts, but in practice, it just makes people into shittier people than they were before. It's there's a lot of really good, interesting theoretical ideas in all of these different political ideologies. I would never say that there's no good ideas in the philosophy and theory of libertarianism, but in practice, in our world, it sucks. And it doesn't help people who need help.
Yep.
And I just feel that since this is a public-facing discussion, and it's not just among us, and even if it were still, I feel it's important when we're talking about these concepts in a sympathetic light, which I think is fair to do and totally fine. I just think it's always important to just mention the real world practical ramifications of these concepts.
Yeah.
Also, my point being, I'm not saying it just to shit on it. I'm just saying I feel like it needs to be, they need to be balanced.
Well, I caucus with the Democrats.
Right.
I'd like to see a pushback against manifest destiny. Is all I'm saying. Is that
Oh yeah.
There needs to be a real serious reckoning with why are we one thing, and a lot of there needs to be I feel like a more like the community kind of based solution stuff needs to be more clearly separated from cleaning up after the big system to replacing it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to believe in the United States anymore. And this kind of weirdly links into G.K. Chesterton. One of his most famous books, The Napoleon of Notting Hill, is all about an England that fractures into every neighborhood becoming its own country, and how there's like this total insane violence that has to occur to make that possible. But once it starts, it can't be stopped, and it makes a better place.
This is a non-fiction book?
No, it's fiction.
You also somehow, in order to get to that, would have to be able to, before that would be possible, you'd have to figure out how to like properly distribute capital and resources. Like,
yeah,
like strip the population down with COVID-19.
What?
Strip the population down with COVID-19. Kill all the people who are so old and own all the money.
And take all the money.
Farrakhan says that the COVID is a cover for a vaccine that will depopulate the country. So
anybody here watching Utopia?
Fruitopia?
No, Utopia?
Oh.
Utopia is a show that's about a conspiracy where the top 1% are like, oh shit, it's coming up on time. And so they make everybody take a vaccine that renders everybody sterile, except for gypsies.
Makes a lot of sense.
I think that the vast majority of Republican policy platform and a certain amount of Democrat policy platform, by that I mean like most policy platforms coming out of the general consensus government structure of the United States, are basically eliminationist policies and have been for decades.
I
don't feel
so
that that's
focused
very
on neutralizing that it might as well be. There's a reason the Republicans are so against like voting reform and like.
Oh yeah.
There's a reason Kentucky was only going to have, for their primary, was only going to have one polling place in every county, which is insane.
And like voter ID laws.
It's because when people can't vote, they win, and when people can vote, they lose. And it's just like this transparent neutralization of the competition as a means of maintaining power.
Yeah, I mean that's the reason why Baltimore has been maintained in the way that it has been for generations now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's literally a rotting city.
It's redlining. I mean,
social ills. It's never been addressed. It could be addressed in a moment if anyone wanted to, just fucking fix it up.
I feel like there's a part of this conversation that I always that sticks with me a little bit. Where is there a good system which has been covered in a layer of corruption? Like, is the voter suppression like ruining a good system, or is the system from the beginning designed for power for the minority of powerful people?
Yes, I think that the system has always been designed. It's like, but that doesn't mean that it can't be true. I don't think that necessarily means. I think that the point of thinking about that should be thinking about transformation rather than like restoration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the American voting system has always been built on this idea of like only some people get to do this. And it's been a sort of like long road of saying like, okay, now we're at this point where technically everybody should be able to do this, but because that puts the ruling class at a disadvantage, they have to find ways to cripple the sort of like theoretical ideal that we've achieved.
With a lot of our investment in the idea that like a democracy is that serves the people as possible is like inevitably the result of indoctrination from the time that we're very little, that this is like a holy thing outside of any particular human time or place, that is just like a force of good that exists independent of any of the people that ever designed governments that work that way.
particularly like 51% majority rules democracy.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a joke. I mean, it's a joke.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Caroline has something to say. Invisible sovereigns, which would be people that control and monitor the media platforms that control the distribution of information regardless of location. Yeah, and we're definitely in a situation in which, like, I mean, that's how you consolidate power, is like make everybody go to the same place for their information. And location becomes a non-issue if we're all getting our news from Facebook and Twitter and like 3 corporations.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially becomes state media. So you can have Fox News and you can have CNN, and they have a different spin on the same thing, but they're ultimately purveying the same disinformation.
Yeah. The end result is still that people are in power, and the way things are just a slightly messed up version of a great thing. A great thing with just a thin veneer of crap that if we scrape it off, then everything will be perfect.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a way of...
That's the Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton model.
Exactly.
And that's saying, like, let's preserve this massive, unwieldy system. We can make it work. Like, we just have to make it so that it's not corrupt anymore. But the nature of a massive system like that is that it will become corrupt. There's no way around that. And so the way that, like, actual democracy works is in, like, Greek city-states where you have, like, 5,000 people making decisions collectively, as opposed to 12 million or however many fucking people live in this country.
It's 300 million.
It's
330 million roughly.
Yeah.
30. It's too many. There's just not a way of preserving a system that gives voice to that many people without it becoming corrupt. Like, it's just going to be that.
Well, yeah, and you have to not be allowed to be a billionaire.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's interesting that so many more people are involved in national politics, you know, like mentally and emotionally, than they are in local politics.
Yeah,
like, there's local politics you can get into that affects your life. Trump versus Biden affects your life this much, people, like this much.
But that's what like national 24-hour media gives us, is national politics. Because it doesn't.
I mean, it's totally true. And like, you talk to my fucking libertarian fucking dad, and I'm like, okay, well, what's like, do you have like tabs on all of your local shit? And he's like, yeah, I probably should. You know, and it's just like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, I think people don't know shit about their local.
Yeah, I mean, national politics set a sort of tone overall, and I think that's what tends to be what affects people most directly.
Well, like per Caroline's point, it's what the media conglomerates focus on.
You turn on TV, you're not going to look. Yeah, in order to get a really serious conversation between, you know, the council members who are running for your council, which is the political election that has the most influence on your day-to-day life. You have to really dig for that shit, you know, like that's like being into like underground noise music, you know, like you have to fucking, you have to look for that, you know, you have to like seek that out. But national discussions about Putin and Trump, which is fucking bullshit anyway, it will be like rammed down your throat in every media outlet, you know, like available, which is so inconsequential.
And then because of that, you see local politics falling into line with national politics. And so, like, in a state like Maryland, where the conversation is not really between, like, far right, you know, jingoism and, like, far left anarchism, which is sort of what the national media portrays a lot of stuff as. Like, it's between neoliberal, machine that has existed for a long time and is nominally like Democrat, and actual progressivism and true leftist politics.
And I mean, I don't know, and like neoconservatism too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point,
our governor,
cynical.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Right. I mean, but he's sort of like this symptom of that national political idea, and where like on the national stage, he is like one of the good ones, Republican wise. But
the second most
in a local sense, it's like, what the fuck are you doing, Larry? Larry, this doesn't make any fucking sense. And so it's,
people in Maryland love him. People in Maryland fucking love that guy.
Because they
Maryland
understand
are Republicans.
they understand him as this like antidote to Trumpism, when in reality he's just a symptom of neoconservatism.
I feel a barrier for me personally to like more investment in local politics is like this omnipresent feeling that anyone who rises up in local politics has ambitions to be on a national stage, and like that comes through in the language. I feel like mainly that like when people talk in PR talk and are like very careful and like strategic, that there's like this, I don't know, like kind of like this stink of ambition to the greatest possible. They want to rise to like the greatest possible version of what they're doing.
But that's what national politics does to them. Like they have to be like the only way to like be a politician now is to have this massive ambition to become the president or whatever, when that's not like the end goal of governance. It should not be the end goal of governance.
It's
but
like,
because
like I would be more interested in local politics if I could like kind of hitch my interest to a person that I really truly believed did not care about a career in national politics.
But it still has practical implications regardless of, I mean, you know, you still, it's like...
That's fine, but I'm emotional. Like, I'm just...
locally still has practical implications on your...
Right, but I don't like... I can't get excited about a politician because it's utilitarian. I'm like a incurable romantic. Like, if someone's going to be my leader, they have to be like a leader. I can't be like, well, this is the guy I got. My personality just won't... There won't be enthusiasm.
I think it's also harder to pay attention to local politics because it's scarier because they're closer.
But it's also often so
mundane. It's easy to find local politics boring on this level of like, well, this is just so small. And I think that to a degree that is you hiding from like, I know some of these people and I can see exactly how this would have an effect on my life. And that is daunting to really get engaged.
But it is a lot of small changes, you know. I mean, like local politics is about like putting bike lanes in and you know, like figuring out which statues to remove or whatever. And like, I mean, some of those things become more broadly symbolic, obviously, but a lot of it's not sexy. It's not really big ticket stuff. It's not the stuff that gets people angry at their parents. It's just this stuff that kind of needs to happen to make a neighborhood work or whatever, and because of that it's not intriguing, you know.
It's a hassle.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I feel like Ryan Dorsey as a city councilman like is really invested in these like small things, like transportation wise, because that's the committee that he's the chair of, but he manages to kind of put it across as something as like, this is actually valuable to you. It's not just like me trying to make these little decisions so you don't have to. It's about like, hey, this is actually going to make your life better in your district.
I feel like it goes back to Long Sun too, like because in Long Sun,
here it goes.
It does though. It's a book about revolution.
Because, you're in a world, right? And they're in this world that's been constructed for them. And we as citizens and human beings are also born into this world that was built, you know, by people we don't know, you know, like in the past. And we don't really have census that, because there aren't effective systems that do this, we don't have census that we're invested in this world or in its creation or in how it functions. We're all just sort of walking around like Sims, you know, like in this pre-built existence, you know, and people aren't really given the information and the tools to understand that politics might work. And I'm not saying that politics even is the thing that drives our society or that it does work, but we don't have any sense that we influence our own world.
Exactly. Yeah, we that the world is tailor made for us reduces our ability to have free will and choice. That's a very
It's
good
just
point.
the
And
thing
it'll
that
be
you
really
live in.
interesting when we move on to Short Sun to compare and contrast.
I agree with Wolf that the place where the story changes is when there's a figure who is like a little bit out of their mind, but in such a way that it makes them like kind of psychotically selfless. And that like in the absence of that person, I feel like there's just a whole lot of people that can't be activated. Like in the absence of a
The thing about Silk, though, is he is also selfish in a way.
Sure.
He has moments of. I was just reading a part where he's outside Blood's mansion, and he like gets to the dried up creek, and he's like, normally this whole wood would be snowed in, and breaking into Blood's house would be impossible. Is this whole drought and many years of unbearable heat all been put here just for me so I can do it now?
Yeah, but immediately after he recognizes how silly that is. And like he starts thinking of immediately after he starts thinking of examples of, are all these people starving because of me? That's fucking crazy.
I guess I didn't interpret that as much right as a given that he's thinking that's fucking crazy as much as
immediately
I think
after it's explicit. It's explicit immediately after.
I don't think that it is immediately explicit. I think it travels through this element.
I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it because
it's an interesting part.
I think that he has to travel through an element of guilt before he can take that before he can reject it as silly.
Also, I think Silk's, like, these moments where Silk is selfish are what makes him the same as people, but it's the...
Oh, yeah. It's how he's more Jesus-like. He is a man. I'm not...
Right.
I'm not arguing against
what makes
you.
him
I'm just
different.
saying it's interesting to see when he's selfish.
Right, but I don't think it's like, well, he's a little this and he is a little of that. I think it's like he's got normal characteristics, but he's got an overwhelming amount of abnormal ones. And that's why, like, history...
I think that his selfishness is an abnormal characteristic, and I think that his abnormal selfishness is part of what allows him to be abnormally selfless in the end. He is selfish, so he is able to conceive of the idea that God gave me a permission personally by whispering it into my ear. Like, that is inherently selfish. But because he thinks that, he is able to be supremely selfless. Again, faith in the lie is able to create a truth.
I agree with you about faith in the lie, but I also feel like you're overselling, I feel like you're overselling the selfishness a bit. Like, I feel like for some reason it is extremely important that, I don't know.
It is. It's important. I agree. It's important that Silk rejects his selfishness. This is the original sin thing. Original sin had to happen so that we can atone for it, because our atoning for it is God. Silk has to be amazingly selfish, because if you're selfless when you have no self, who gives a shit? But if you're an egomaniac and you do a selfless thing, then that's really something. That's an actual honest-to-gosh miracle. That's why everybody loves Iron Man, because he's the most biggest prick ever. But in the end, he died to save the entire universe, half of it anyway.
He died to get out of his contract with Marvel so he could make Dr. Dolittle.
And because that failed, he's going to be making more movies with Marvel. Good.
That's what we need.
We do need more movies from Marvel, I think.
We do. We need more movies where there's good guys and bad guys, and they fight.
That's right.
And by fighting,
guys,
I mean fists.
They're fighting against the law, and they have to take the law into their own hands.
Manichaeism is the only way to make sense of our universe.
It is kind of astonishing to me how popular the Marvel movies are when they're. I guess in the early stages, they're about a failure of law enforcement, and then I guess later on, when they get to the Avengers sort of thing, it's about these like global, like cosmic stuff that cops would have no way of dealing with. But
I don't know. You got Nova. That's basically space cops.
yeah, I guess they are space cops.
The Kree have a space cop kind of role, but they're the like FOP space cops.
But like on the ground, I think most like your basic superhero story, you're like whatever, your Daredevil or Spider-Man, like it's about how law enforcement is a failure. Where the Punisher, even more directly, is about how law enforcement is failing.
Yeah. It's about how law enforcement in its current form is like compromised and failing, but ultimately you punch things to win.
Right.
Like you have to connect back to the punching to win. Like when we get back to the pure idea of punching bad guys, unencumbered by all these victims' rights and weird shit, then we'll be okay again. It's like reconnecting to just brute
it's about a failure of law enforcement, but then it's also about tapping into something bigger. That like Black Widow has this horrifying speech at the end of Captain America 2, where she basically says, yeah, you don't want superheroes, but we're too big to fail, because what if fucking aliens come back? None of y'all can fight aliens. We have a god of thunder. He can fight aliens, so you can't stop us. So there's this element of like, it's not just that the police are failing, it's that we need to have individuals who will fight the police and the police's boss when we need.
The antidote.
Like it's not just that the cops have failed, it's that people with guns have to go to the state capitol so we don't have to wear masks.
We need bigger cops.
Yeah.
Fuck Marvel. I'm going to say that.
Yeah. Well, fuck Disney.
That stuff's for kids.
Sure, fuck Disney. I mean, I love comic books. Like Spider-Man is the best. X-Men are great. Whatever. But like, man, Marvel is.
It's back to that like consolidation thing, is that when you've got comic books that come out once a month with multiple authors and multiple illustrators, you can have this like plethora of useful ideas mixed in with tropes and stuff. And when you've got one company that cranks out like 12 movies a year or whatever, and everything has to come back to that centralized narrative, then you lose any value that you might be able to get out of the comic books to have a monolith.
Yeah, it's just neoliberal propaganda.
Whenever you allow a system to centralize, it cephalizes, grows ahead, acts like a superorganism, and consumes all of its constituent parts. Everything always has to be decentralized. Everything. Nobody can be allowed to talk to each other except through codes carried by children.
Sounds fun.
Ursula Le Guin came up with it. I won't take credit.
I gotta go soon.
You said what?
I gotta go soon.
Yeah,
same.
It has been a very long time.
It's our average. Like,
I mean, we've talked about religion, the various forms of libertarian politics, the Marvel Disney franchises. I think we've ticked all the boxes for a WOLFE episode.
We didn't talk about
one chapter of the book.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the book just a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, this is typical of when we're shifting gears between books.
I think we had to have this meeting like
totally.
There was no way to be able, like, maybe actually. So next meeting, do we want to just start on the text and just like try to?
Let's start on chapter 2. Let's chapter 2 to 5.
Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I definitely want to talk about this like mansion escapade, because it is buck wild.
Absolutely.
And blood.
Oh yeah. One thing that you got to question yourself when you're reading this book: who is Mukor at any given point in time? Is this person Mukor? I don't know. Anyone at any point could be.
What's the
Mukor's an
etymology
evolved
of
bio.
What?
What is the etymology?
Oh, sorry,
of mucor? What is
I thought it was
mucor?
one of those things that is both a plant and an animal product.
It's like a mushroom or a mold or something, I think. So yeah.
Ooh. Whoa.
Mold. Specifically mold.
Okay, hey, I found that place, Connor. It's in chapter 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 pages into chapter 4 in my book. As Silk groped amongst the closet's trunks with leaves crackling and twigs popping beneath his feet, he reflected that if the year had been a more normal one, this forest might now lie deep in snow, and what he was doing would be next to impossible. Could it be that this parched, overheated, and seemingly immutable season had in actuality been prolonged for his benefit? Next sentence. For a few seconds, the thought halted him between step and step. All this heat and sweat for him, poor Maytera Marble's daily sufferings, the angry rashes, the withered crops and shrinking streams. Immediately he has that instinct and immediately questions it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see how that's not saying what I interpret that as him traveling through the guilt of all of that in order to get to the idea that might be ridiculous and selfish. Yeah, I think that describes that exactly.
Okay, but I think that it's not like I don't. When someone mentions that Silk has a selflessness, I feel like you're very heavily like, but he was selfish first in a way that's, I don't know, like equal.
Yes, I think an important part of his selflessness is that he is also very selfish.
I think he's normal, and then I don't think he's going from extreme selfishness to selflessness. I think that he's going. From
I feel like he was told that he was a special little boy his whole life, and like that he's a special little boy because he's so good, and so like there's an element of his like I am selfless that is selfish. But then because he's starting to realize like, oh, being so enamored with my own selflessness is a dick move, and then rejecting that, and that is where his selflessness becomes beautiful. I think that his selfishness is an important part of the beauty of his selflessness, that he is more selfish than most people.
Okay, I agree with the sentiment, except that I think he's exactly as selfish as most people.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's staggering himself.
Well, we'll return to this conversation many times, I'm assuming. So.
We will, because I think that he constantly has to go through this of like, everything's for me. That's insane. That is insane. Even because as the book goes further, things more and more appear to be designed for Silk. So it's hard not to think that. Like, that's constantly tested. In this satanic way, almost you're the point of this whole thing. Everybody wants you to lead. How can you not think maybe it is all, and then have to reject it in order to stay good? Mm-hmm. I think.
All right.
So, when's the next meeting? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Let's do 2 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks. Chapter 2.
Is that the 18th?
Yeah, that'll be the 19th.
19th.
Yeah.
Alright.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Yep.
You know it.
All right.
Well, this meeting was a lot better than I thought it would be.
Oh, really? What'd you think it was going to be?
But not because of you guys, just because of me.
What'd you think?
I just mean I thought it was going to be bad because I was in a weird state about the books.
Oh.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's good.
I thought I was going to basically have nothing to say this entire time. So I'm glad that wasn't true. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
I was worried that everything was going to get spoiled for me, and I feel like that has not happened. So thanks.
Well, that's one of the tricks about the spoilers in this. I feel like there's an element of there's no way that we can spoil this book.
Right.
Because even as there are certain facts that I can say, here's a fact, like I have no idea what this book is. happens.
Yeah, I mean,
New Sun is similar. New Sun is similar, I think. New
Yeah,
Sun
Wolf-
is very similar.
Wolf's books are not about what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Well,
still,
I
Yeah, you can
still-
play the plot, but the plot
I
is
still
on point.
enjoy the experience of discovering them from the inside out, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's still an enjoyable aspect. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that we shouldn't have spoilers or whatever, or that or that like it's really important or would spoil it, but I do enjoy like just discovering it from inside of this world, you know, and then realizing the grandness of it all as I go along. Like it's just pleasurable.
I
So.
am veritably certain that no matter what, you are going to do that for things that I've never seen before in this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Many times over.
That's another thing. That's another thing about spoilers for sure. Is like everyone's spoilers would be just different.
Yeah.
This
Everyone's
book
bombshells.
is unmined. It's
That's-
all question marks for me.
I got to say this too.
Very
I
good.
love it. I think it's awesome. I was, kind of on the fence about whether I would like it, but yeah, it's great. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it so far. I feel like every time I pick it up, I blow through like 60 pages of it. Just like,
Yeah.
It's so weird because like in New Sun, like huge gaps of time occur and like long distances
Yeah.
are traveled in short amount of time, and in this thing it's like, at least at the beginning, it's second to second. Like
Yeah.
it's like slower than real time.
yeah, it's really decompressed.
It's like, and then I put my shoes on.
Yeah.
And then I thought for 10 minutes about the gods and which shoe should I put on first, because whose day is it? But maybe it's somebody else's in charge of my shoes right now.
Pretty,
And then I
pretty
had
much
a
all forward,
warm
actually.
memory of my mother putting on my shoe when I was a wee baby.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's another reason why it reminds me of Dubliners, It's just like, here's what these people are doing today.
Yeah, I mean that's like, I feel like there's so much Joyce here, where it is this just like bolts out of the blue, these like weird decompressed section, all this
Yeah.
just like thoughts that are tied up with the narration that aren't, like the characters aren't the narrator, and yeah, it's
It's a holographic narrative.
holographic narrative, sure.
Thanks.
Totally.
That's
Well,
the wolf
always
style.
always playing 5D chess.
That's right.
All right.
Well, all
Five
right,
drinks.
guys. Good meeting.
Wonderful day.
Hell yeah.
See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, all right.
See you in 2 weeks.
Good to
Get
see
your ass
everybody.
involved.
Bye.
Bye.
Are we done?
I'm still confused as to when it actually ends. Does it end when I say end, or does it end when
It
it
ends.
catches up?